Chapter 195. Sighing, he lowered his head and sighed. If it's the work of the witch Aisha, then the Shadow Guard's loss is indeed justified. But no matter how wonderful the witch Aisha's medicine is, how could I not detect the slightest bit of difference? As long as the Shadow Guard felt the slightest difference, they would inform me. Why do you think my disciples haven't shown up yet? Sword Saint said. I see. Ingi nodded in understanding. The Empire's military, the Red Camp, Sword Mountain. With the three forces working together, the Shadow Guard is convinced of their loss. Jilin tilted his head in puzzlement, wondering what the Red Camp was. What do you want to do now? Sword Saint asked, as if he already had this legendary powerhouse under control. Qin Lan, His Majesty's kindness to you is as heavy as a mountain. Are you sure you want to betray His Majesty? Betray the Empire? Ingi ignored Sword Saint and asked Qin Lan. I will always be loyal to the Middle Empire. Qin Lan said straightforwardly, this is my original oath. But you betrayed His Majesty. Betraying His Majesty doesn't mean betraying the Empire. His Majesty is the Empire. Wrong. Why is it wrong? His Majesty will eventually abdicate, but the Empire will exist forever. Our paths are different and we cannot work together. Mastering E, you finally understand. Humph. Just you wait, if anything happens to His Majesty, I won't let any of you off. Ingi said coldly. His murderous intent was extremely cold. He was the only one among all the legendary powerhouses who could assassinate. There was no precedent of anyone who was targeted by him surviving. From what you said, Mastering E is going to leave? Sword Saint said aloud. What? Sword Saint, are you going to stop me? Although I can't beat you, if I want to leave, you can't stop me. Ingi said. You're right, if you want to escape, no one can stop you, Sword Saint said. Wait. Jilin suddenly walked out and looked at Ingi. Red calamity, Ingi's eyes narrowed into slits. Jilin walked towards Ingi step by step, each step as heavy as 1,000 caddies. The huge momentum completely suppressed Ingi. The cosmic array had yet to be redeployed. What could the Middle Empire use to resist the disaster? Brother Long. The third prince took a step forward and stood in front of Jilin. Brother Long, let him go back and report. I need to let my old man be prepared to abdicate. I don't care. Just pay me afterwards. Definitely. The third prince nodded. He then looked at Ingi and said, Lord Ingi, please go back and tell Father to prepare the Imperial Jade Seal and the Book of Nations. I will go and get them later. Ingi was stunned by the third prince's words. After a while, he said, everyone says that the third prince of the Middle Empire is extraordinary and rebellious. Seeing you today, you are indeed better than the rumors. How can you say such rebellious words so easily? Ha! The third prince just smiled and didn't argue. Lord Ingi, take care. Ingi quietly looked at the third prince. Finally, he clasped his fist and bowed. Then, he turned into a black light and turned around to leave. The third prince, why are you? Bane was confused. This was clearly the best opportunity to kill an enemy general. They are all pillars of the country. It would be a pity to die here. The third prince said. Then, the third prince looked at Qin Lan and said softly, Marshal Qin, hello. Greetings, third prince. Qin Lan clasped her fist and knelt on one knee as she said loudly. Greetings, third prince. Greetings, third prince. The soldiers of the Jinshi army also knelt and greeted him loudly. Their voices resounded through the clouds. The golden warship in the sky also dropped 9 feet meaninglessly. This was the etiquette of an army meeting the emperor. The third prince raised his hand slightly. The soldiers in the warship rose up. It seemed that the whole world had risen because of the third prince's raise of his hand. Jilin shook his head slightly as he thought to himself, humans just love these meaningless things, let's go. The third prince took the lead and walked towards the palace. Jinshi army. Let's go. Qin Lan finally unsheathed her sword and pointed it to the sky. Yes. The soldiers all turned back. The warship in the sky also began to turn its bow. Jilin looked at this dramatic scene and thought that it was so easy to change the direction of humans. The third prince's road to rebellion was paved by Sword Saint. The warship's strength was equivalent to that of a legendary master, the escort of nearly 5,000 soldiers from the border, and the sacrifice of many sects. Most importantly, there was Jilin, who had overwhelming combat power. What should have been a fierce and bloody battle had turned into a one-sided situation. Not long after, the rebel army led by the third young master successfully broke into the imperial palace. They came to the center of the palace, the Taiji Palace. Leaving behind a mess behind him, the Golden King, Li Jing. They were sitting on the throne that represented the most powerful people in the world. Below the main hall, there were dozens of soldiers scattered around. They were covered in wounds and their clothes were disheveled. They stared fiercely at the third prince and his men. Among them, there was a burly man with bright eyes and a beard. He was wearing a golden armor and a red cloak. Although his golden armor was damaged and his cloak was tattered, he still looked very powerful. He looked like a fierce general who had just fought his way out of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. He stood at the front of the dozens of wounded soldiers and glanced at the Jinshi army soldiers in front of him. His eyes were like torches and filled with righteousness. Although the Jinshi army soldiers had the upper hand, they could not help but lower their heads when they met the burly man's eyes. There was no exception. This was because the armor that the burly man wore was the same as Qin Lan's, golden armor and red cloak. That was the exclusive armor of the Middle Empire's marshals. The burly man was the Middle Empire's southern marshal, Luo Fenghu. Marshal Luo. Qin Lan gave a fist salute. Marshal Qin. Luo Fenghu shouted. Marshal Luo. Sword Saint held his sword and said, Sir Sword Saint. Luo Fenghu nodded slightly. Marshal Luo. The third prince gave a fist salute. Third prince. Luo Fenghu's chest heaved violently. Luo Yuan. Ouyang Ju gave a fist salute and said two words. Enough. You traitors, do you still have to greet me one by one? Luo Fenghu shouted. If that's the case, may I trouble Marshal Luo to move to the side? The third prince said, I went through so much trouble to see my father. Can you let me pay my respects first? Luo Fenghu was silent for a while and moved to the side. Greetings, father. The third prince knelt on the ground and kowtowed seriously. Greetings, your majesty. Qin Lan, Ouyang Ju, and the other soldiers also knelt down. At this moment, Li Jing was still the emperor of the Middle Empire. Li Jing glanced at Jilin and said gently, Rise. Even though his own son had led the rebel army to attack him, the Golden King's graceful bearing didn't seem to have changed at all. His appearance didn't change either. It was as if the third prince hadn't fought his way in, but had been summoned here by himself. Qin Lan, the Golden King, still held a pen and wrote on a memorial. He didn't even raise his head as he spoke. Yes, your majesty. Qin Lan replied respectfully. Why? For the Middle Empire. Good answer. Actually, I'm not surprised that you're on yours side. That's why I summoned Luo Fenghu back when the Nanqing Empire's army was fighting the orcs. It was to restrain you. I understand. What a pity. The Golden King shook his head. Sir, the Golden King called softly. The old minister is here, Ouyang Ju replied. Are you satisfied with today's results? The old minister is extremely satisfied. Sir, you've always blamed me for killing too many of your students. Do you want to prove that I was wrong today? Yes. I wasn't wrong. Now that the third prince has successfully taken the throne, only one of the princes has passed away. There are only 13 left who have their own forces. This is the great fortune of the country. No, sir. The Golden King shook his head slightly. These are the causes of future chaos. You mean the princes will rebel? That's inevitable. We can be more vigilant in the future. You can watch over 2 or 3, but you can't watch over a dozen. Isn't there a saying? Don't be afraid of thieves stealing, but be afraid of thieves remembering. Moreover, it's hard to guard against thieves in your own home. When the third prince has a strong foundation in the future, the princes will naturally lay low and live in peace. Ha, sir, the 16th prince dared to attack the palace with half a battalion of soldiers. The 11th prince dared to take a gamble when he had no chance of winning. This shows that people can't be rational in the face of the temptation of the throne. Not necessarily. Then we'll see in the future. Bane. The emperor said. Bane didn't expect the emperor to call him. He was flattered and stepped forward. Your Majesty. That sword strike was good. I haven't been injured for many years. The Golden King said as he touched his abdomen. Bane's face turned bitter. He didn't expect the Golden King to mention this at this time. Ingi stood beside the emperor, holding the screen behind the emperor, and glared fiercely at Bane. If Ingi's cultivation was higher and he could kill with his eyes, Bane would have been beheaded by now. As soon as Ingi got angry, he couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. He was already seriously injured. When the third prince attacked the palace, Luofeng, who commanded 5 dragon-class warships and 30 elephant-class warships to fight against Qinlan. The third prince's side naturally fell into a disadvantage. Then Jilin joined the battle between the warships. Jilin, who had completely let go of himself, became about the size of a dragon-class warship. But those warships were as fragile as immobile targets in front of him. Just as Jilin was happily dismantling those warships, Ingi made his move. He aimed at Jilin's eyes and was ready to launch a sacrificial strike. Then, Jilin swung the warship and smashed it at him. The only reason Ingi was still alive was because of his profound cultivation, and he was able to dodge in time. Chapter 196. As for the fact that Ingi was still alive, even Jilin felt a little regretful. But on second thought, humans designed warships not to smash people, so it was normal for him to fail. Thinking of this, Jilin felt that he had opened up a lot. Brother Mingyue. You were becoming the emperor, did you get what you wanted? The Golden King said, I wonder how many disciples of Sword Mountain were injured this time. You don't need to worry about the disciples of Sword Mountain. As for you are becoming the emperor, even you and I have an explanation to Ming-Ying. The Sword Saint said, now that we have painstakingly built such a high platform for you, you should take advantage of it. There's no hurry. The Golden King shook his head, although I know that Ming-Ying doesn't want Yuer to be the emperor, we can talk about this later, Yuer. The Golden King called. Father, your son is here. The third prince cupped his fists and said. Speaking of which, this is the first time you and I have met here. Yes. I didn't expect to meet on the battlefield for the first time. I am not surprised by today's scene. I knew that sooner or later, there would be a day when a son would lead an elite army into the palace. Because this is retribution. As the saying goes, what you get with the sword will eventually be lost with the sword. Sooner or later, you will have to pay it back. I just didn't expect it to be so early, and I didn't expect that the person would be you. You left home when you were young. You may not know, but you have always been the object of worship in the hearts of your brothers. They yearn for you because every one of your brothers has had a hard time since they were young. They also wanted to run away, just like you, but they didn't dare to, because they have to study hard every day, civil and military strategy, politics, and people's livelihood. Under the best resources of the empire for many years, each of them can be called a rare talent. But you are not a good candidate to inherit the throne. But I am here now. This is because of an accident, because of a huge accident. Winner takes all, a win is a win. Come up. The Golden King beckoned from his throne. The third prince glanced at Luofeng. Luofeng took a step back. This was to make way for the third prince. The third prince walked up the platform and stood beside the emperor. The emperor casually handed a memorial to the third prince and said, "Take a look." The third prince took it and opened it. This year, it rained heavily for days, and the Luo River burst its banks in Yangon City. The flood wreaked havoc, flooding thousands of hectares of fertile land. I hope your majesty can make a decision soon. This. The third prince looked at the emperor. This is a memorial from Lumuji, the governor of Yangon City. What does my son think we should do? This. Should we allocate funds for disaster relief as soon as possible? From where? From the national treasury? Ha ha ha, everyone in the world knows that there is no money in the national treasury. I didn't expect that you didn't know. This, take a look at this. The emperor took another memorial and handed it to the third prince. The governor of Jianlin County is in an emergency, your majesty. When I was in a small village, I found that the people were infected. A few days later, when I went to check again, I found that most of the 200 people in the village were infected. I have sealed the village and don't know how to deal with the aftermath. I hope your majesty can make a decision. We should send a doctor to treat them. The third prince's words were resolute and decisive. The emperor looked at him and chuckled, as if he had heard the ignorant nonsense of a child. Come, come, come. Father will tell you. Do you really think that the governor of Jianlin County doesn't know what to do? If he really doesn't know, why would he seal the village so decisively? Why would he deal with it so appropriately? Then, do you know what the empire usually does when faced with this kind of situation? The third prince shook his head. Slaughter the village and burn it clean. This is the most straightforward and appropriate method. The governor of Jianlin County also knows this process. That's why he locked everyone up and waited for me to make this move. Only then would he dare to set this fire. The third prince was trembling with anger. Nonsense. As the ruler of a country, I should protect my people. Killing the people for the ruler. This is violence. Tyrant, you had better give me the imperial jade seal. The emperor wasn't angry at being called a tyrant by his own son. If it were you, would you choose to save those people? Of course. Don't tell me that my middle empire can't save 200 people. Of course. Think about how powerful my middle empire is. Not to mention 200 people, even if there were 10 times or 100 times more, it would still be a piece of cake. It's not a problem at all. Golden King nodded amiably and said. Then, his face suddenly changed, and his voice became stern. He slapped the mountain-like table fiercely. So many. Can you manage all of them? Which one of these memorials doesn't need manpower and resources? You want to be the emperor? Can you do it? Yes. Ha, you can do it. Here, take it. The Golden King stuffed the brush into the third prince's hand. He pointed at the memorial and said, as long as you draw a circle here, I will give you the imperial jade seal. Then, I will announce to the world that the throne is yours. Draw it. What does this mean? The third prince asked seriously. Although he didn't always stay in the palace. He knew that the emperor's brush couldn't be drawn easily. Moreover, it was on such a sensitive memorial, as long as you draw a circle here, it means that you have given the governor of Jianlin County the power to kill. He can then get rid of those 200 people and nip the plague in the bud. You want me to kill them with my own hands? The most common thing an emperor does is kill people. But they shouldn't be good people, they should be innocent people. In the eyes of an emperor, there are no good or bad people in this world. There is only value. Killing the innocent is always wrong. Killing 200 to save 10,000, isn't that right? Teacher said that killing 1 to save 100, this is a classic but also a bastard question. Teacher also said this to me, but sometimes, this world is such a bastard. If you want to be the emperor, you have to take responsibility. Do you dare? The third prince turned his head and scanned the faces of the people below. Sword Saint, Ouyang Ju, Qin Lan, Zhao Qi, Bane. The third prince took 2 deep breaths while trembling. He didn't see a trace of surprise on these people's faces. Except for Bane. You dare! The third prince took the brush from the emperor's hand and drew a big circle on the memorial. The red circle looked scarlet and dazzling. The lives of 200 people were erased just like that. Give it to me. The third prince stretched out his hand to the emperor, without any of the respect he showed to his father just now. The Golden King looked at him deeply. His eyes were full of gratification. Take it. The Golden King took the imperial jade seal from the table and placed it firmly in the third prince's hand. You must remember, as an emperor, you must let go of your emotions and do everything for the sake of the empire. What are you doing? Father, I didn't have any intentions when I rebelled. I just wanted to take revenge on you and make you angry. I didn't expect that uncle and teacher Ouyang would persuade me to change my mind and come to this step today. But now I've changed. I've decided that I want to do better than you. I want to change this country. What can you change into? At least my people won't be burned alive just because they get sick. I won't have to make such a bastard decision. What killing 1 to save 100? What killing 200 to save 10,000? Go F*** King hell all of you. I want every one of my people to have enough to eat. They can read the words of the saints. They can have doctors to treat them when they get sick. I don't want to be easily killed because I'm afraid of infecting others. I want everyone in my country to be able to live like a human. The Golden King looked at the third prince in a daze. After a moment of silence, he actually chuckled. What are you laughing at? You think I can't do it? It's not that I think so, but you definitely can't do it. Not just you, even if the founding father was alive, he wouldn't be able to do it. But that's not what I'm laughing at. I'm laughing because I suddenly remembered that when I first ascended the throne, I actually had the same thoughts as you. Although you haven't been by my side for a long time, you're still my son. Since you have the same thoughts as me, why don't I see any changes in the Middle Empire? The Middle Empire has been established for thousands of years, and it has always been like this. There haven't been any major changes. Even when that female ancestor was on the throne, the lives of the people didn't change much. Some people didn't even know that the emperor at that time was no longer surnamed Li, and she was a woman. What do you mean? When a woman becomes the emperor, we can't deny that she has the determination to change the world. You're right. Even though she became the emperor as a woman, she didn't succeed. Do you think you can do it? I think I can. When you become the emperor, you'll find that you can't change anything. The only thing you can do is to maintain the balance of the country and the court. What's the purpose of maintaining balance? Balance means that there won't be any major changes. It's peace. In the words of the literati, it can be described as the 4 C's are at peace, the country is prosperous, and the people are at peace. 200 people were killed by the emperor, and you call that a country is prosperous and the people are at peace? Looking at the overall situation, yes. I don't think so. You've been drunk in Spring Breeze restaurant for more than 10 years, living in a dream. Now that you're in this position, it's time to wake up. You've woken up from your dream? I've woken up a long time ago. Father, I've heard a saying. You and I are in the prime of our lives, and only when we die in a dream will we fall into old age. Father, you're old. It's time to abdicate. Chapter 197. The Golden King froze for a moment, thinking that this child really didn't grow up. Sir, is this the successor of the empire that you think highly of? Sometimes, a pure heart and a kind heart are more important than anything else. Even if you're living in a dream, you're still so smug? People live for their dreams. But the emperor doesn't. That's why the Middle Empire has been stagnant. The third prince said. But it has always stood at the top of the world. The Golden King said in a deep voice. But it's not enough. The third prince said. Father can understand that you want to seek change, but there are good and bad changes. How do you know that your rash actions won't cause worse results? Someone told me this a few days ago. Whether it's merits or demerits, future generations will judge. Who said that? Him. The third prince pointed at Jilin. The Golden King blinked. This was the first time he had made eye contact with Jilin since he entered the Taiji Palace. Are you the Red Calamity? The Golden King stared at Jilin and asked. My real name is Akagudel, and my human name is Jilin, Jilin said. Bane raised his eyebrows and looked at Jilin with some surprise, wondering why he would say his real name. Even he had rarely heard of Jilin's real name. Whether its merits or demerits, future generations will judge. This seems to be the saying of the ancestors of the human race. Why, even the noble dragons deeply believe in the principles of the human race? The Golden King said. The so-called knowledge and principles of the human race never belong to the human race alone, but to all intelligent creatures. But humans never think that creatures other than humans are intelligent creatures, so humans have the illusion that principles are unique to the human race. What do you mean? What I mean is that principles and knowledge have always existed between heaven and earth, and the most common principles are everywhere and applicable to all areas. It doesn't belong to the human race, it's just that humans are good at summarizing. Then who does it belong to? Naturally to the life that created it. Who can create reason and knowledge? God, of course. Are you really a dragon? Jilin raised his hand. Red scales covered his entire palm and arm, and his red nails were abnormally ferocious. Dragon, why are you meddling in the affairs of humans? I know that humans are nothing in your eyes. Jilin tilted his head and thought for a moment before saying, because you're bored? Ha! The Golden King shook his head and laughed. Stop joking. Dragon, did you know that we had already noticed your existence before you broke into the royal palace of the sacred city? The Golden King said. Everyone knows that there is a rare red ore in the Gerda Mountains. It contains rich fire elements and can be used as a weapon's energy source. Jilin furrowed his brows, wondering why he didn't know. Every year, the empires would send experts to Mount Gerda to obtain ores as strategic reserves. This has been going on for hundreds of years. Wait. Don't lie to me. Although I don't know much about humans, I still know some basic things. The number of humans is as large as the sand in a river. If the empires had really dug the mountain together for hundreds of years, no matter how big Mount Gerda is, it would have been dug into a huge pit. You're right. Under normal circumstances, that would be the case. However, that volcano is not an ordinary mountain. It is one of the 4 forbidden areas of humans since ancient times. Not only is the temperature of Mount Gerda terrifying, but it is also filled with deadly sulfuric gas all year round. Only experts of level 8 and above are unaffected. Moreover, the mining here is not the traditional mining. Mount Gerda will automatically produce elemental creatures periodically. They have no consciousness and wander around the volcano aimlessly. They will automatically attack people who invade their territory. Human experts destroy them. After their bodies dissipate, they will drop red ores. You mean? Humans have been slaughtering elemental creatures for hundreds of years just to obtain some stones to use as artillery shells? The word slaughter is not very appropriate. Because they have no consciousness, they are not considered living beings. They are just moving stones. The Golden King expressed his disagreement with Jilin's choice of words. Jilin's eyes lit up slightly. He thought to himself that they had consciousness, but humans did not have the ability to communicate with them. We'll talk about this later. Please continue. Jilin said with a smile. However, the occasional flame that sprang out from his body showed that he was not calm at the moment. It was originally like this. However, suddenly one day, the experts sent by the empires all disappeared from Mount Gerda. There was no news at all. Naturally, we could not ignore it. Therefore, we sent even more elite experts to rescue them. However, even though there were level 9 diamond level experts, they did not make it out alive. Only a few words were passed on. According to the information, those elemental creatures suddenly gathered together and carried out construction activities in the underground karst cave of the volcano. Jilin thought for a moment and knew that the Golden King was probably talking about the time when Bat-Tel brought countless elemental creatures to build the Red Dragon Palace for him. The elemental creatures that were originally evenly distributed in every corner of Mount Gerda suddenly gathered in an underground cave. Naturally, it became difficult to take action. Therefore, the 5 empires discussed and decided to take action personally to probe the situation. the hero king of the Divine Dragon Empire heard that you blew a few houses away. Combined with the location, he linked this matter to you. Since this matter was related to the dragon race, the Divine Dragon Empire took the initiative to take on this task. They directly dispatched the Empire's strongest warrior unit at that time, the Dragon Knight Captain of the Empire, Tiz. He also personally led a team of Dragon Knights. When Jilin heard this, he suddenly became absent-minded. Suddenly, he seemed to see that human who raised his sword and charged at him despite knowing that he was no match for him. That human who said that he would never understand glory. That human who shocked his soul for the first time, 20 Dragon Knights, flying dragons, and 20 magicians of grade 8 and above. This was the maximum strength that the Divine Dragon Empire could bring out under the premise of suppressing the marine race. We all felt that it should be foolproof. Because those Dragon Knights were together, they should be able to escape unscathed even in the face of a legendary expert. Jilin immediately recalled the time when Tiz and the others fought their way from the surface to the deepest part of the Red Dragon Palace, the Chaos Temple. They relied on their miraculous cooperation to cause countless elemental creatures in Bat-Tel to be unable to do anything to them. However, we did not expect that the 20 Dragon Knights would vanish into thin air after entering the volcano. Not even a single flying dragon could return. From then on, the 5 empires did not mention Mount Gerda and avoided it like the plague. Jilin thought that those fellows were living very well in the Red Dragon Palace. They were even helping the dwarves move rocks. We originally wanted to ignore that volcano, but we did not expect you to appear out of nowhere. From the safest place in the world, the Imperial Palace, you forcefully kidnapped the Princess of the Empire, the Saintess of the Church of Light, Staya. You even destroyed the Imperial Palace of the Saimai Empire, causing the emperors of the world to be unable to sleep at night. Because the Imperial Palace is no longer safe. When Jilin heard the 3 words Staya, he scratched his head in distress. He thought that he indeed did not consider this matter at the beginning. What did he capture? It's all Aisha's fault. After that, you went to the Snow Wind Empire. Under the protection of the Snow Wind Empire's war weapons and fortresses, you still dealt a devastating blow to the core city of the Snow Wind Empire, Morag. Humanity's most advanced technology almost collapsed. After that, you participated in the war with the Snow Wind Empire. In one battle, you defeated the 5 absolute top-notch experts of our human race. Sword Saint, Red Dragon, Emperor of Physique, Holy Wall, and Pope. You even caused the death of the acting Pope of the Church of Light. The strength of the Snow Wind Empire was greatly damaged. Finally, you gathered the Dwarf Kingdom. You made the entire dwarf race migrate from the northernmost part of the continent to the westernmost part of the continent. Since then, the Red Force was born. After that, not long after, you went to the southern Xian Empire and easily became the Beast King. This caused the Beastmen to launch an unprecedented war against the Beastmen. In the end, because of you, the war ended abruptly, but because of this, I dared to call back the Southern Marshal, thinking of stabilizing the situation. The result was obvious. While you were stirring up trouble in the southern Xian Empire, you were also able to make my middle empire riddled with holes. What are you trying to say? Jilin raised his head and looked at the Golden King, already somewhat impatient. The Golden King ignored him and continued, if it wasn't for you, none of these things would have happened. If it wasn't for you, Old Seven wouldn't have died. My princes wouldn't have returned to the capital. The door of the Imperial Palace wouldn't have disappeared. You wouldn't have been able to control the other princes. Gai Mingyue and Qin Lan, Ying Yi and Luofeng who would have been able to stop them. The empire would be stable, the country would be prosperous, and the people would be at peace. But with you, all of this changed. Red Disaster, you don't belong to this world. Why do you want to get involved in this world? Your existence has too much influence on this world. You are an anomaly. The biggest anomaly. I lost because of you, I can't accept defeat. Jilin looked at him for a while and said, you can't accept defeat? Endure it. Chapter 198. The Taiji Palace fell into a dead silence. The atmosphere was so heavy that it was as if it had solidified. It was hard to breathe. Until a soldier from the Jinshi army was so shocked that he couldn't even hold his spear properly. Clang! The sound of a weapon falling to the ground broke the silence in the Taiji palace. Qin Lan turned around and glared at him. She didn't have the charm of a normal woman. She was full of intimidation. The soldier quickly picked up his weapon. He knew that in this space where there were many strong people, it didn't matter whether he picked up the weapon or not. But he still had to do what he had to do. Qin Lan only glared at the soldier and didn't say anything else. It wasn't just because of the situation, but because she knew that she couldn't blame the soldier. Who would have thought that the emperor who had ruled the Middle Empire for so many years would directly say that he wasn't convinced? This wasn't something that the emperor should say. Although it made sense that he wasn't convinced. What was even more unexpected was that the godlike Qi Lin actually acted like a hooligan on the street and directly retorted back, and he retorted to the point that the soldier was speechless. The Golden King gripped the armrest of the throne tightly. He thought for a while and felt that what Jilin said made sense. He took a deep breath and calmed down before he said, "Even if you can attack the palace, the officials of the Third Prince's palace won't listen to you. The civil and military officials might not listen to your orders. The Third Prince is the rightful heir of the royal family. Why wouldn't the officials listen to him?" Ouyang-ju said. "Sir, I'm afraid that only these people in the palace would treat a person who stays in a brothel as the rightful heir of the royal family." The emperor smiled. "My students and old friends are all over the court. It won't be a problem for me to help the Third Prince win back the officials," Ouyang-ju said. "That's true. Sir, you have students all over the world. You can definitely do it without saying anything." The emperor nodded. "But what if the prime minister is opposite you? Can you guarantee that there will only be one voice in the court? Zhuge Zhang is indeed a powerful person, but it's a pity." Ouyang-ju shook his head and sighed. "What, a pity?" The emperor's face suddenly darkened, as if shrouded in a layer of haze. Qin Lan saw that Mr. Ouyang open his mouth but couldn't say anything, so she took a step forward and clasped her fist. "Your Majesty, please allow me to report. We know that if we want to seize the power of the Middle Empire, we can't avoid the Prime Minister. Thus, we had Mr. Ouyang meet with the Prime Minister in secret. In the end, the Prime Minister was convinced, as in, he also betrayed me." Li Zhang's voice suddenly trembled a little, and then he laughed bitterly. He cupped his hands to Ouyang-ju and said, "Mister's eloquence is as good as it was in the past." Ouyang-ju didn't say anything. "What about Azan? Are you afraid to come see me?" The emperor asked. "Prime Minister, he knew that he had let your Majesty down, so he jumped into a well to commit suicide," Qin Lan said. "Azan, he..." The emperor suddenly stood up and was stunned. Why did he have to do that? The emperor shook his head and sighed. He staggered down from the throne, and then walked towards the harem. His footsteps were unsteady, and his back looked extremely miserable. How could it not be desolate when everyone had betrayed him and he was at the end of his road? His most loyal ally had betrayed him and left him. This finally became the last straw that broke the emperor's back. Sometimes, there was no difference between a person and a camel. The third prince watched his father walk down from the highest point, but he didn't send him off. Because Li Jing really left the imperial seal on the table. This was abdication, passing on the throne. Li Jing had already stepped down, but this position must be taken by someone. It couldn't be empty for even a moment. As the saying goes, a country can't be without a ruler for a day. The third prince slowly sat on the throne. He held the imperial seal with both hands. "Your Majesty. Your Majesty. Your Majesty." Other than Jilin, Bane, and Sword Saint, everyone present knelt down. Even the southern Marshal Luofeng, who was no exception. Because this position was personally given to His Majesty by the retired emperor. Although there were many secrets. But it was also Li Zheng's decision. He was the one who left the imperial seal on the table. It wasn't His Majesty who let people snatch it. This was what it meant to be legitimate. At least in the Central Empire, a new generation of Golden King was born. Liu. Jilin looked at the Golden King with burning eyes. It was really burning eyes, because one could see the flames in his eyes. That. Marshal Qin, quickly go and bring the gold from the palace's treasury here. Yes, Your Majesty. The Golden King didn't say anything, and Qin Wan didn't ask, because this was something that had been agreed upon long ago. The main reason was that the two of them tacitly didn't want Jilin to know how much gold was left in the Middle Empire after giving him the gold. The Golden King didn't dare to let Jilin go to the treasury himself, because he believed that if he let Jilin go to the treasury, there wouldn't be any gold left there. Although he was a little idealistic and naive, he wasn't to the point of believing that a megalosaurus would talk to him about morality when there was gold all over the ground. The Golden King really lived up to his name as the Golden King. Just a part of the palace's treasury was piled up into a mountain of gold in Taiji Palace. Jilin looked at this mountain of gold and suddenly had the idea of looting the Middle Empire's palace. Jilin still didn't know how to hide his true thoughts, so everyone understood the expression on his face. That was unsatisfied, that was unsatisfied, that was greed. The atmosphere in the hall became a little tense once again. Brother Long? The Golden King sat up high and looked at Jilin. Ah! Jilin suddenly came back to his senses and looked up at the Golden King. The Golden King didn't say anything and just looked at him with a smile in his eyes. Jilin sighed. Even though he wasn't human, he couldn't fall out with him on the spot and rob the third young master. No, it was better to say that only humans could do such a thing. Jilin waved his hand and put away the gold. Everyone in the hall quietly sighed in relief, as if it wasn't a mountain of gold that disappeared into thin air, but a mountain that was pressing down on their hearts. Since the matter has been settled, it's time for me to leave, Jilin said. Brother Long, take care. Have a safe trip. The Golden King said, this matter was successful all because of Brother Long's help. I won't dare to forget such kindness. It doesn't matter whether it's a smooth trip or not. As for kindness, it's all done with money. Jilin said, but the third prince, when you said that you want to change this country, do you believe it yourself? I do. Do you know how many humans there are in the world? Let everyone have enough to eat and have doctors to treat them when they're sick. Do you know how many meals and doctors are needed? I still believe it. Although it's indeed a little unreachable. It's not unreachable, it should be called a miracle. The world you described is a miracle comparable to the stars. It requires countless small miracles to happen one after another, and not a single one is good. It's a world of miracles. Do you have the ability to achieve this miracle? The ancients said that there are endless descendants. I can't achieve this miracle, but I can start it and leave it to the future generations to do it. When the time comes, I hope that Brother Long will bear witness. I will. Jilin turned and said, also, you should change the way you address yourself. Golden King stared blankly for a moment, then smiled and said, Brother Long is right. I agree with you. As Jilin walked out with Bane, he said loudly, I'm also very interested in the world you described. Just take it as an attempt to preserve this world that both you and I are interested in. The Central Empire. I won't touch it in the future. Let it continue to exist. This is my, aka Gudel's, promise. After Jilin finished speaking, he walked out of the Taiji Palace. At the entrance of the Taiji Palace, he turned into a red megalosaurus the size of a palace. With a flap of his wings, he flew straight into the sky. In the sky, he turned into a red flame and shot toward the south, disappearing in a flash. Jilin's transformation set off a gust of wind in the Taiji Palace. Everything in the palace was blown to pieces, but the Golden King felt extremely happy in this gust of wind. From then on, the great rock rode the wind and soared 90,000 miles. Traveling to the East Sea in the morning and Kanwu in the evening, from then on, the ambition of a swan and the blueprint in his heart were all displayed. From then on, there was no one above tens of thousands of people. Only the heavens. Chapter 199. Li Jing walked out of the Taiji Palace in a daze. He was all alone. The guards in the palace had also suffered heavy losses because they went to stop the third prince. The palace, which was originally heavily guarded by soldiers, was now a rare sight of peace and quiet. Li Jing walked towards one of the palaces in the harem. That was the palace where the emperors lived after they abdicated. He was very familiar with that path. Because many years ago, he was the one who personally sent his father to that palace. The only difference was that he was leaving on his own now. Li Jing looked at the grass swaying in the cracks of the palace floor and laughed for some reason. It was really rare for an emperor to enter this palace at such a young age, Li Jing thought. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew from behind, causing Li Jing to stagger. Li Jing raised his head and saw Qi Lin flying over his head. In the blink of an eye, Qi Lin disappeared into the horizon. Li Jing looked at the direction Qi Lin flew in a daze. After a long time, he shook his head. He pushed open the door of the palace. He knew that as long as the emperors walked into this palace, they would not be able to come out for the rest of their lives. He should not be an exception. Creak. The sound of the door opening made one's teeth ache. This door had not been opened for many years. Naturally, no one took care of it, so it was natural that it would become like this. That was what Li Jing thought. However, when he saw a person lying on a wooden recliner and fishing leisurely, he immediately changed his mind. This door had been opened not long ago. Li Jing walked to that person's side. He wanted to see who it was. The palace was already turned upside down, but this person still had the leisure to fish and sleep? Was he not afraid of being implicated? When Li Jing saw who the person was, he was so angry that his eyes widened and his hair stood on end. Without any hesitation, he kicked out with his leg. That person was instantly kicked to the ground. Even the recliner was overturned. That person was instantly awakened. When he saw who it was, he quickly got up and bowed to Li Jing. "Your subject, Zhuge Zhang, greets your majesty." "Aren't you dead?" Li Jing pointed at Zhuge Zhang and shouted angrily. How would this subject dare to die? Didn't he promise His Majesty that he would retire with His Majesty? "Look, I've even prepared a fishing rod." The Prime Minister showed a rare cheeky smile. "Was it you who instructed Qin Wan to deceive me?" Apparently, Li Jing had not changed the way he addressed himself. "As the Prime Minister, you actually colluded with the rebels to frame me? How do you still have the face to see me?" "Don't worry, Your Majesty. The Middle Empire is still under the surname of Li, and the power of the empire hasn't fallen to anyone else." Prime Minister Li bowed and said, "If that's the case, why not?" "Nonsense," Li Jing said angrily. "If Jiangshan changed his surname, would I still come here to fish with you? He would have drowned himself in the river. Why did you switch sides?" "Your Majesty, please take a seat and listen to me." The Prime Minister lifted the chair and invited Li Jing to sit down. "This subject would like to ask Your Majesty, even if this subject does not change sides and remains on Your Majesty's side, what are the chances of stopping the Red Disaster from the Third Prince's camp?" Li Jing narrowed his eyes and shook his head lightly without saying anything. There was no way to stop it. "If that's the case, since we can't stop it this time, we have to set our sights on the future. If he acts on a whim this time, he can help the Third Prince force Your Majesty to abdicate, causing the Middle Empire to easily change. No one can guarantee that he won't make the Middle Empire no longer be under the surname of Li, or make the Middle Empire disappear from the world. Even the great Drakonar can't hold him for more than a few days. What else can you do?" Li Jing looked at the Prime Minister and calmed down. If he could really use this to suppress the Red Disaster, then abdicating 10 or 20 years in advance wasn't a big deal. "Your Majesty, in order to fight against the Red Disaster, all the countries in the world have begun to prepare, and they have even taken out their trump cards. The Snow Wind Empire took out all of its wealth to mass-produce the bright snow godly weapon. The Saimai Empire's Church of Light also took out a taboo scripture from who knows where. We can't hold back anymore." "You mean?" Li Jing stared at the Prime Minister and his gaze suddenly became very unfriendly. "Nine Cauldron Sword." The Prime Minister met Li Jing's gaze and braced himself to say, "Do you know what you're saying?" Li Jing leaned forward towards the Prime Minister and said in a low voice, "Your Majesty." The Prime Minister knelt on the ground and buried his head very deeply. He said with a trembling voice, "The red disaster is the greatest enemy of our human race. Our Middle Empire has stood at the top of the human race for many years. We should step forward bravely. I think you've read too many books these years and your brain has gone stupid." Li Jing slammed the chair and said in a deep voice, "Nine Cauldron sword, you can't touch it. It's not a sword. It's not a weapon. It's not Gai Mingyua's flowing light. If it breaks, we can still change it. That's a national weapon. It's used to suppress the fate of the country. You want to use it to slay a dragon? That's just wishful thinking. If the Nine Cauldron sword breaks, the fate of the country will be broken. We can't take this risk. Your Majesty. The Nine Cauldron sword is the #1 weapon in the world. How can it not be used? How can it be broken? What do you know?" "Back then, I promised the Nine Cauldron sword to Gai Mingyua, but when I became the emperor and saw the sword, I gave up on this idea. Even if I had to go back on my word, I couldn't give it to him. Do you know why?" "I understand." The Prime Minister sighed, "But your Majesty should know what the original name of the Nine Cauldron sword was." Li Jing suddenly raised his head and looked at the Prime Minister. "The original name of the Nine Cauldron sword is the Human Sovereign Sword." The Prime Minister said, "It's said that in the mythological era, there was a human ruler called the Human Sovereign. The Human Sovereign had the fate of the entire human race on his body, and when he fought, his might could destroy the heavens and earth, comparable to the God King and the Celestial Emperor." "You want to create a human sovereign?" Li Jing asked. "That's right. Other than this, I can't think of any other way to fight against the red disaster." "Candidate for the human sovereign?" "Naturally, it's the third prince, Liu." "Does he know about this?" "For now, I don't know. Becoming the human sovereign is easier said than done. You have to become the ruler of the human race. The Middle Empire couldn't possibly conquer the other 4 empires. That's why you want the Nine Cauldron sword." Li Jing didn't say anything. "You don't want to use the Nine Cauldron sword to conquer the other 4 empires. Instead, you want the third prince to bring the other 4 empires' national weapons to the first mountain with the Human Sovereign sword. You can ascend to the position of the Human Sovereign." The Prime Minister said. "What a joke! I don't even want to lend the national weapon to my own brother. The other 4 empires are willing to lend it to you? Furthermore, this is cheating the heavens. Your Majesty, this is called cheating the heavens. The War King has already agreed, but he requested that the national weapon must always be under his sight." Li Jing was stunned, then lowered his head and said, "That's right, he's the #1 expert of the human race, so he must have the confidence to ensure the safety of the national weapon. When did you start doing things behind my back? You can communicate with the War King, and I didn't know about this at all? Your Majesty misunderstands this subject. When have this subject's actions been hidden from your Majesty? This matter was done by Lord Sword Saint." "I see." Li Jing nodded slightly, seeming to feel better. "Since that's the case, if you can borrow the national weapons of the other 4 empires, you can take the Human Sovereign sword." "Thank you, Your Majesty." The Prime Minister knelt on the ground again. Li Jing sighed, got up, and helped Zhuge Zhang up. "There's no need to do this in the future. I'm no longer the emperor. As for the Human Sovereign sword, it belongs to you now." Chapter 200. In the sky, in the clouds that were too high for human eyes to reach, Jilin grabbed Bane and flew quickly. High up in the sky, there was a strong wind blowing like a knife all the time. Humans couldn't breathe or survive here, and their bodies would even dissipate like bubbles because they couldn't withstand the strong wind. Even humans who had the ability to fly wouldn't rashly come to such a high place. The only creatures that could fly here should be those high-grade flying magical beasts. But those magical beasts were very sensitive, and most of them had already noticed Jilin's breath and flew far away, so the scene in front of Bane's eyes could really be called a vast expanse of mist in the sky. It was empty. It could make people feel that they were the only one in this vast world, but Bane obviously wasn't in the mood to enjoy this beautiful scenery. He was in Jilin's hand, and although he wouldn't be blown by the strong wind, he was still too scared to open his eyes. This might be human instinct, an instinctive fear of nature. Jilin thought to himself as he looked at Bane, who was holding his head and shivering. Open your eyes and take a look, there aren't many humans who can see this scene. Jilin said. When Aisha saw this scene for the first time, her eyes were wide open and she didn't even blink. You could tell that she was a goddess. Bane still didn't dare to open his eyes, thinking that Aisha wasn't human. Then, what about Staya? Did she dare to look? Jilin thought for a moment. She didn't even look at that time, she only cared about blaming me for tearing down her house and hurting innocent people for no reason, ha. Bane imagined that scene and couldn't help but laugh out loud. Thinking about it, a princess who had just been taken away by a dragon didn't cry, didn't make a fuss, and wasn't afraid. Then she seriously blamed the Megalosaurus and said, "You're wrong, how could such an abnormal and weird scene not make people laugh?" When Jilin saw Bane's reaction, he let out an undetectable bitter laugh. In his heart, he thought that he had also felt that something was amiss back then. It was a pity that he was still inexperienced and did not detect it in time, otherwise, he would have returned this princess to him, and replaced her with someone who didn't know how to fight, who was weaker, who was more pitiful. Bane smiled, and his mind couldn't help but relax, and opened his eyes. The first thing that entered his eyes was not the boundless sea of clouds, nor was it the blue sky that could make one feel relaxed and happy with just a glance. Instead, it was the 3 fingers of Jilin's. Ben's first thought was that he felt like he was in the legendary 5-Finger Mountain. However, in the next moment, Bane's heart was filled with endless shock. Because of the 3 giant fingers, ants. Bane looked at it in a daze, and didn't know what to say. According to human terms, this situation should be considered as having one zzzzzzzzz. As for whether it was painful or not, it depended on the situation at the time. But no matter what the situation was, how painful it wasn't a big deal. But Jilin's SS was a big deal. For all beasts, claws and teeth seemed to be the sharpest and strongest parts of their bodies. Because those were the weapons they relied on to survive. No animal's nails were like humans, soft, fragile, and insignificant. Not to mention the dragon race. Bane never thought that there would be anything in this world that could break 2 of Jilin's nails. Even the Sword Saint's sword had only left an insignificant white mark. What happened to yours fingers? Jilin moved his fingers. Although a few days had passed, he still felt a dull pain. For something like killing a god, even a dragon has to pay a price, right? Jilin said it casually, but in reality, he was secretly ruthless in his heart. He didn't expect Atz's body to be full of cracks after the 6700 bright snow god self-explosion. Under such circumstances, he could still break his fingers. And he even punched him a few times. In the end, he still underestimated his enemy. If there was another chance in the future, he would definitely get 10,000 puppets to kill him directly. Killing a god? Bane exclaimed. Which god did you kill? The light god? The earth god? The fire god? The water god? Bane revealed all the gods he knew in one breath. Jilin looked ahead and didn't say anything. It was a little awkward in this empty sky. It wasn't that he didn't want to say, but he couldn't. Even the gods that Bane mentioned, the worst one was above the main god's position. How could an underage ordinary dragon like him reach it? It was more likely that his parents were. If Jilin didn't know that he was too powerful in Bane's heart, he would have suspected that Bane was mocking him. Bane saw that Jilin didn't say anything and thought that it was something that was hard to say, so he didn't dare to ask. How long do you need to fly to the Beast God Mountain? Half a day? From the center of the Middle Empire to the Beast God Mountain, you should need to cross half of the Middle Empire, the entire southern Exian Empire, and half of the wasteland. Bane lowered his head and pondered. Then where did you fly for so many days? Didn't I say before? To the north of the Snow Wind Empire. No matter how north it is, it can't be so north. Actually, I always had a suspicion. What? You flew so high, can you see the road clearly? Did you get lost before? If I throw you down now, I can still catch you before you hit the ground. Do you believe it? I believe it. I was wrong. It's impossible for me to get lost. Jilin was silent for a while and suddenly said. Because your eyes are good? You can see the road below through the clouds? Only humans have the concept of roads. Have you seen any flying creature walk? Then how did you determine the direction? It's you. Me? Do you still remember the days when you lived in the Red Dragon Palace? Bane nodded. He couldn't forget those days because it was probably the most boring period of his life. He stayed in the underground cave all day long and couldn't do anything. The late king of the Middle Empire also said that ordinary humans couldn't stay on the surface of Mount Gerda, but you lived in the deepest part for so many days. First of all, I know that I could survive in that cave because of you. I didn't even feel a trace of heat. Needless to say. Also, in any human empire, only the dead king is called the late king. He's not dead yet. Jilin was silent for a while. That's not the point. What I want to say is that you could survive in the Red Dragon Palace because of the protection I cast on you. People who are blessed will have a special mark on their body. This mark can only be seen by me and is very eye-catching. It's like a torch in the dark night. Aisha and Staya also have this mark? They don't. Aisha has the protection of the god of darkness, and Staya has the protection of the god of light. Can't there be two of them at the same time? No. Bane nodded thoughtfully, and then suddenly asked, then which direction are you flying towards? Although I can't cast protection, there are countless ways to determine a person's position. Wasteland, Beast God Mountain. Singh was sitting on a chair and saying something to the chiefs of the various tribes. The Lion Man Singh, who used to be mighty and extraordinary, was now frowning and sighing. This was because the atmosphere in the Beast Man race had changed. Everyone could feel that a storm was about to come. This wasn't the scariest thing. The scariest thing was that no one knew what those brainless orcs wanted to do. This kind of unknown was the scariest thing. Singh felt that the orcs had never been so impetuous before. In the past, the orcs had always been obedient when they had nothing to do. If there was a fight, they would go out and fight. After the fight, they would come back and stay. They had never been like the humans, where some knowledgeable person suddenly appeared and wanted to do something. Therefore, the orcs hadn't changed in the past few years. According to Li Zheng, the world was peaceful and the country was prosperous. But until a few days ago, Jilin's clone suddenly disappeared from the throne, and there was no news about it. The atmosphere of the entire orc tribe suddenly changed. The king of the beastmen was gone, and he didn't die while leading the beastmen to war. Instead, he was just sitting quietly in his chair and suddenly disappeared. Who could believe this? No matter how the orcs present patted their chests and guaranteed that they saw it with their own eyes, the rest of the orcs didn't believe it. This was the destined king of the heavens. This was the prophecy of the orcs' rise. This was the symbol of the orcs' prosperity. The beastmen still had to fight a real world war under his leadership. How could it be gone so easily and so unreasonably? Because of Jilin's sudden disappearance, the orcs almost went crazy. Singh was puzzled. The orcs had been waiting for Jilin's divine revelation for more than 100 or 200 years. Nothing had happened for so many years. But how could it be so exciting in just a few days? It was as if the sky had collapsed. In the end, it was Aisha who said this. People aren't afraid of not having it, but of losing it after having it. It's just like how humans describe moths that survive in the dark. I could have endured the darkness, but if I hadn't seen the light. Singh admitted that Aisha's description was very apartment. But these pretentious words were of no use in the current tragic situation. That was why Singh had gathered all the chiefs together to discuss countermeasures. Chapter 201. Singh looked around, and every orc chief that he saw lowered their heads. Although he was no longer the Beast King, he still had the dignity of a Beast King. Everyone, how many years have you been in charge of the various races? It's not too much to say that you're like gods in your respective races. right? How can you not control your own people? Now that the Beast King is not here, I'm warning you, don't cause trouble. Hurry up and tell the people below to stop. Sing, you're no longer the Beast King, don't put on airs with me. You're still the chief of the Lion tribe, why don't I see you suppressing the people of the Lion tribe? The chief of the giant elephant tribe slammed the table and said in a low, muffled voice. He was obviously not afraid of Sing. Isn't that so? The people below are all spreading the news. Is it because he stole your throne that you harbor a grudge and secretly harmed the Beast King? The chief of the ape tribe also said. Sing's eyes widened, thinking to himself, are all of my tribe a bunch of idiots? Who in this world can harm him? Even if you're thinking blindly, can't you think of a slightly more reliable one? I want to secretly harm him. Look! He admitted it. He admitted it. The fox's tail is showing. The chief of the fox tribe jumped up and pointed at Sing as he shouted. Sing looked at the bright red tail behind the chief of the fox tribe and sighed as if he had given up. Then, without any warning, he threw a punch. Although the chief of the fox tribe was also a top powerhouse, in front of the former Beast King, the legendary powerhouse Sing, he could not even block a punch. Boom! A loud sound was heard. The chief of the fox tribe was sent flying, slammed into the wall, and fainted. You actually dare to attack? Everyone, show him who's boss. You're no longer the Beast King, why are you still so powerful? The chief of the giant elephant tribe suddenly stood up and threw the table to the side in anger. His body, which was 2 to 3 times larger than Sing, was wrapped in a boundless aura as he charged toward Sing. Compared to the charge of the chief of the elephant tribe, even the raging bull seemed petite and cute. Go! Hit him, I've long found him an eyesore. When the various patriarchs saw that the giant elephant patriarch had already gone up, they immediately howled and rushed up without a second word. From the looks of it, it wasn't just a day or two that they wanted to take action against Sing. You still don't like me? Isn't that obvious? You birdman with eyes on both sides, who do you think is pleasing to your eyes? As Sing spoke, he knocked down the Condor tribe's patriarch with a punch. Ha! Who would have thought that the lion race would look down on the harpy race? I'll teach you a lesson today. You're from the priest clan, what are you blindly meddling in? To be able to become the head of a Beastman clan and have the qualifications to enter the Beast God Mountain, one must have the strength of the 9th rank. Although not all of the clan heads were present, there were still more than a dozen of them. Thus, the drama of a dozen 9th stage powerhouses besieging a legend quietly unfolded in the Beast God Mountain, with so many top-notch experts fighting in a cave. Even if the Beast God Mountain was naturally extraordinary, it would still cause an earthquake. The sound of air exploding from the experts' fists reverberated in the cave for a long time, like thunder. The 2 lion soldiers guarding the entrance of the cave looked at each other. They carefully glanced into the cave. Then, they couldn't help but shrink their necks, quickly retracting their gazes and standing still. This bunch of clan heads, what kind of sacred place is the Beast God Mountain? How can they fight inside? A soldier whispered. That's right. Another soldier quickly nodded and agreed. More than a dozen clan heads besieging the former Beast King in front of the Beastman throne, what kind of scandal is this? Yes, yes, as members of the glorious Beast God Mountain, shouldn't we stop this kind of thing? Yes. You go and tell those clan heads that the Beast God Mountain is not a place for them to fight. Tell them to behave. It's better that you go, cough cough. I was just joking just now, don't take it seriously. Now that the Beast King is not here, our duty is to guard this cave. How can we leave for a moment? That's right. Even if something big happens, we can't leave the cave for even half a step. We can't give the invading enemies any chance to take advantage of us. That's right. The 2 soldiers outside the door wanted to stop this battle due to their sacred mission, but in the end, they didn't dare to enter. This was human nature, needless to say. What was worth mentioning was the battle between the clan heads. The deafening sound of air exploding gradually subsided, and there was no longer the feeling of demons dancing wildly and hundreds of clans shouting at the same time. However, there was only one sound that was still stubbornly sounding. Bang! 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 The sound was extremely frequent and heavy. It was the giant Elephant Clan head and Sing fighting one-on-one, because the other Beastman Clan heads had already fallen. Only this giant Elephant Clan head had rough skin, thick flesh, and extraordinary talent. That was why he could barely hold on against Sing with his level 9 strength. The giant Elephant Clan head's fists, which were the size of a human head, punched faster and faster, and it looked like his eyes were already red. Sing was also getting impatient. Finally, he didn't hold back anymore and used all his strength. The giant Elephant Clan head immediately rolled on the ground like a gourd, rolling over a dozen times on the ground. Finally, his body hit a stone pillar and stopped. The giant Elephant Clan head raised his hand at Sing, and finally put it down weakly. His head tilted and he fainted. At this point, the magnificent feat of more than a dozen level 9 powerhouses besieging a legend ended in failure. Sing looked at the Beastman Clan heads lying on the ground and cursed in a low voice. He felt that compared to these people who appeared to be idiots on the surface, he was the real idiot. This group of people naturally knew what everyone wanted to do by gathering here today. However, these people obviously felt that compared to fighting, the work of appeasing people was obviously more troublesome. That was why they fought with him. No matter which organization they were in, they naturally didn't have to work after being beaten up like this by their leader. Sing scratched his head and walked to the table to sit down, at a loss of what to do. All of a sudden, a wave of cheers rang out without any warning. Sing frowned, thinking that those cheers obviously came from the ground. If they wanted to reach his position, at least close to 10,000 people would need to cheer at the same time. Were those people finally starting to do something? With that thought in mind, Sing looked outside. In the sky outside, a red comet with a long tail was rushing toward him. That red comet was unusually bright. Even during the day, it was still clearly visible from thousands of miles away. Sing heaved a sigh of relief. You're finally back. Where have you been these days? Sing looked at Jilin, who was dragging Bane in, and asked sternly. I'm not sure either. After coming out of that world, the landing place seemed to be random, Jilin said. This is? Sing asked as he looked at Bane, who was limp on the ground with lifeless eyes. Bane, Jilin said. Oh. Sanger nodded. Aisha had mentioned this name to the Dwarf King before. I thought you started to eat people. You even caught someone back. What's wrong with him? I don't know either. Jilin shook his head. When he came down from the sky just now and saw a few hundred orcs, he became like this. Oh. Sing nodded in understanding. This kind of thing was not uncommon. He understood at a glance. The orcs had also existed in this world for a long time. Even if they did not want to, they still had a subtle mutual influence with humans. Specifically, the image of the orcs frequently appeared in many human legends and stories. The specific roles they played were those cruel and bloodthirsty demons and ghosts. Therefore, to humans, the Beast God Mountain should be the biggest demon's den in the world, hell on earth. No wonder Bane was so scared that his legs turned to jelly. It's good that you're back. Sing said emotionally as he looked at Jilin. Yes, Dwarf King, where's Aisha? And how's Staya? Jilin asked. When Bane heard Jilin asking about Staya, his eyes seemed to have regained some life. He grabbed Jilin and stood up with difficulty. He only had one wish now, and that was to not hear the lion-headed monster in front of him say, already eaten. I don't know what the Dwarf King has been doing recently. He stays in the house all day and doesn't come out. Staya is still the same. She hasn't woken up yet. As for Aisha, she's brewing medicine for Staya. Brewing medicine? Jilin and Bane shouted at the same time. Their voices were also filled with shock and uneasiness about that. I'm looking for a recommendation ticket. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 202. Jilin and Bane looked at each other. There was only one thought in their minds, oh no. Jilin closed his eyes, but Staya's position appeared clearly in front of him. Without saying anything, Jilin grabbed Bane and ran towards Staya's direction. The witch who hated the Church of Light the most in the world was going to brew medicine for the Saint of Light. Naturally, one could only imagine what kind of thing would be boiled out of it. Bane and Jilin both knew that the relationship between Aisha and Staya could not be described as bad. It was like fire and water. However, the reason why the two of them were able to live together for such a long time was entirely because neither of them was able to kill the other. In addition, Jilin was keeping watch at the side, so no tragedy had occurred. But now, Staya was completely useless and had no consciousness at all. Although the Holy Grimoire of Light had the ability to automatically protect its owner, no one knew if this artifact alone could block Elsa, who possessed the Holy Grimoire of Darkness. Jilin's speed was extremely fast. It didn't take long for him to reach Staya's position. Jilin directly pulled the door down from the door frame. Jilin looked inside the door and immediately let out a sigh of relief. In the room, Staya was lying peacefully on the big bed covered in animal fur. She looked unharmed, and her complexion was better than before. The sunlight that came through the window gently shone on her face, making her golden hair shine and dazzle the eyes. There was nothing else in the room. There was a set of table and chairs by the door, and there were traces of it being used. No one knew who used it, but it should not be Staya. After that, the only things left in the room were Staya's bedside table, and a bowl of green medicine on the table. Bane first looked at the bowl of medicine, then looked at Jilin anxiously. The bowl of green things successfully reminded him of some painful memories that he did not want to recall. Jilin carefully picked up the bowl and sniffed it. As for Bane, he did not even dare to smell it. "How is it?" Bane asked nervously. "How can I smell it?" Jilin rolled his eyes at Bane. "As a dragon, you can't even tell if it's poisonous? Have you seen any poison that can poison a dragon? The ability to distinguish poisons is not what a dragon needs." Yes, dragons are powerful. What do we do now? Why don't you try it? If it's poisonous, even if it can't poison me, it can definitely poison you. Bane's hand. This thing was obviously not to be accepted. Bane shook his head and used all his strength to express his refusal. "What are you afraid of? If you are really poisoned, can't you just ask Aisha to give you the antidote? First of all, this is different from the stories you always read. Not all poisons have an antidote, and it's the kind that can be cured after eating it. Secondly, I have never seen Aisha make an antidote. Have you seen it before?" Just as Jilin wanted to say something, a crazy voice came from outside the door. Jilin? Where are you? Are you back?" Jilin turned his head and looked outside the door. He saw the Dwarf King with disheveled hair running towards him with a crazy expression. The Dwarf King now looked like a completely different person. His hair was messy, and his eyes were red. It was obvious at a glance that this person hadn't slept well for a few days. Jilin looked at the Dwarf King rushing towards him with a ferocious face. He didn't know why, but he felt a little scared. Jilin consciously took out the God's Soul and handed it to the Dwarf King. The golden light illuminated the entire space. Bane looked at the God's Soul. When this thing came out, Bane had an impulse to kneel down devoutly. The light of the God's Soul was very bright, but it wasn't dazzling. It also contained a very majestic holy warmth. The Dwarf King stopped and looked at the God's Soul in a daze. He asked in disbelief, This is God's Soul?" Jilin said bluntly. The Dwarf King's eyes widened. He looked at the God's Soul and 2 streams of hot tears flowed down. However, he didn't seem to feel it. Jilin put the God's Soul in the Dwarf King's hand. The Dwarf King was taken aback and hugged it tightly, as if he was afraid that this thing would disappear into thin air or grow wings and fly away. "Artifact, can you make it?" Jilin asked. Ha. The Dwarf King didn't care about Jilin at all and just laughed. Then, as if he had gone crazy, he wandered around the corridor and mumbled some strange words. "Dawn of the dwarf race. The strong surpass the ancestors. Heaven has eyes, thank the god of forging for blessing. Jilin was a little puzzled. This thing was obviously brought by him. Why did the Dwarf King thank that god? Hey! Bane shouted aloud. The Dwarf King's crazy state made him feel a little uneasy. Ah! Bane's call seemed to have worked. The Dwarf King looked at him blankly, then his eyes rolled and fell to the ground with a plop. What's wrong with you? Bane was shocked and rushed up to hug the Dwarf King. But no matter how he shook, the Dwarf King showed no signs of waking up. Jilin. Bane said anxiously. It's okay, I won't die. Jilin seemed to be so calm all the time. I'm just too happy. What's wrong? Why did he fall? Sing finally caught up. He saw the Dwarf King lying in Bane's arms and asked curiously. It's nothing. Jilin said casually, then handed the green soup bowl to Sing. What's this? Sing took a look and actually took half a step back. This was made by Aisha. It's obvious. Jilin nodded. She told me that if Staya drank this bowl of medicine, she should be able to wake up and her injuries would be fine. Because this is the prescription recorded in the Dark Scripture, you believe it? Jilin was a little doubtful. I believe it. Then what are you afraid of? As Jilin spoke, he took a step forward with the bowl. Sing immediately took a step back, because Aisha said something after she personally fed Staya the medicine. What? She really won't die. Where's Aisha? She left after feeding Staya the medicine, and we still don't know where she went. She didn't even take this bowl. Then we don't dare. There are things that the orcs are afraid of. Even the strongest lion is afraid of a poisonous snake. Bane glanced at Sing, who was as majestic as a mountain, and thought to himself, what you said is really convincing. There was a snake in this room before, as the guard of this room. It's the five-colored snake that everyone in the wasteland is afraid of. As long as it's in this room, no orcs will be willing to come to this room, except for me. Ben sucked in a breath of cold air and looked at the room with some lingering fear. He was glad that he came out alive after going in. However, it could also be because of Jilin's presence that the little snake didn't dare to come out and he was lucky enough to escape. Jilin blinked to show that he was a little puzzled. Because a legendary master is immune to poison. Bane added. Yes. Then what are you afraid of? Jilin took another step forward. Sing also took another step back, because the five-colored snake is also immune to poison. Then it drank a mouthful of Aisha's medicine. Then in this room, there are no more snakes now. Thank you for your recommendation, subscription, collection. Thank you. Chapter 203. The Dwarf King fell down with a haggard face. Everyone thought that he would be in a deep sleep for a few days and would not wake up. Unexpectedly, in less than an hour, the Dwarf King slowly woke up. The first thing he did when he woke up was to hold the god's soul in his hand tightly. This thing was tightly held in his hand before he fell asleep and could not be broken. The Dwarf King let out a long sigh of relief. Awake? The Dwarf King was startled and turned his head to look. It turned out to be Jilin looking at him motionlessly. Yes. The Dwarf King nodded. Let's go quickly. Back to the Red Dragon Palace. Jilin did not expect that the Dwarf King would say this when he woke up after taking a nap. What? Naturally, we have to hurry up and forge the artifact. This time, the entire dwarf race will participate. No one wants to miss it. Don't be in a hurry. Why not? The dwarf race has been waiting for nearly 1,000 years. I can't wait any longer. Where's your sword? Jilin paused for a moment and then took out the giant sword from the void. The Dwarf King suddenly became short of breath and his eyes were about to pop out. Because the giant sword was now broken into 2 pieces. What's going on? It successfully cut off one of God's arms. Then it died gloriously. The Dwarf King began to gasp violently and kept comforting himself in his heart. It's okay, it's going to be reforged anyway, it's okay, I can't beat him, let's go quickly. The Dwarf King lifted the quilt and jumped out of bed. "Wait a minute," Jilin said. "Where did Aisha go?" The Dwarf King was stunned and stopped in his tracks. He shook his head blankly. "I don't know. I haven't seen her in a few days. Aisha has a habit. She doesn't use her own furnace to make poison." "In that case, where did the furnace that made the green soup bowl come from?" "Of course I made it." "That's poison." "You don't know?" "She told me that it was a prescription recorded in the dark scripture. That it could cure Staya." "No, you're lying." The dwarf froze and frowned. "What? Could it be that the Dragon Clan's golden eyes have the ability to see through lies?" "Not really, but the golden pupil has the ability to see through the dark tome. Therefore, I've read that book. It was impossible for that book to contain any prescriptions for curing illnesses and saving lives. That's too conflicting with the style of the book." "So Aisha lied to me?" "No, you're lying to me. This lie can fool Sing into believing me. But there's no way I can fool you." The dwarf race had replaced the position of the witches to have a place in the Snow Wind Empire. Therefore, you should know something about them. How can a believer of the god of darkness cure people? You're able to observe things so carefully, it's really beyond my expectations." The Dwarf King stared straight at Jilin as he spoke, his eyes filled with surprise. He thought that he could deal with the matter with a few words, but now he was exposed in front of his face. This was a little awkward. After staying in the human world for so long, it's inevitable that you'll pick up some bad habits. The Dwarf King nodded his head and agreed with this statement. "What exactly happened? Where is Aisha? Why did you help her poison Staya? Compared to forging artifacts, is this important?" "Aisha's sudden disappearance made me very uneasy. I rarely have this kind of emotion." "You can't determine her location?" "She's special." The Dwarf King sighed, shook his head and said, "I see." "What?" "When Aisha left, she told me that if you keep asking about her whereabouts, I'll give you this. If you don't ask and cover it up." The Dwarf King said, took out a piece of paper from his side, and handed it to Jilin. Jilin took the paper, feeling a little strange. He thought that he finally knew who used the desk in Staya's room. But writing a letter was really not Aisha's style, and why would the Dwarf King listen to Aisha's words so much? They didn't have a good relationship before. Jilin opened the paper with doubts, looked at it seriously for a while, and nodded. "I see, Jilin, I'm glad that you can read this letter. Because this means that you're becoming more and more like a human. If it was you in the past, you definitely wouldn't have seen this letter." Jilin scratched his head and thought, why did she start off by scolding the dragon? "First of all, I need to leave for a while and do something I need to do. You don't have to look for me. We'll meet again soon. As for the green medicine, the Saint of Light was lying in front of me so defenseless. This was an opportunity, I had to try it. But unfortunately, I failed. The Holy Grimoire of Light is really extraordinary. Since the poison can't kill her, then I'll tell you a way to save her. I don't know if this method will work or not, it's entirely up to you. Because it's not a method, it's more like a legend. I know that ever since the incident in the Snow Wind Empire, you've been looking down on human legends. But this, for the time being, I think it's still somewhat credible. Legend has it that in the Endless Sea in the east, there's an elf island blessed by the goddess of life." After Jilin finished reading the letter, he burned it to ashes. The Dwarf King didn't say much, and just said, "Let's go." He clearly expressed that he couldn't wait to forge the artifact. "How long do you need to forge the artifact?" Jilin asked. "It's hard to say. This is an unprecedented feat. When we forge the artifact, we're using the body of a mortal to do the things of a god. No one can say for sure. Can it work?" "Hearing you say that, I suddenly feel that it's very difficult." Jilin was a little stunned. "It can work," the Dwarf King said with certainty. It was as if he wasn't answering Jilin's question, but making an oath to something. Seeing that the Dwarf King was so determined, Jilin couldn't say that he didn't believe him, so he asked, "How long will it take?" "About a year to 2 years." "A year?" And this is under the condition that everything goes smoothly. Are you kidding me? No. A year, Jilin raised his head and thought for a moment. Okay, let's go. Jilin nodded and walked out with the Dwarf King. He went to look for Bane first. Then he looked for Sing. Then he asked Sing to find a carriage. Because the previous carriage was said to have been driven away by Aisha, Jilin also didn't understand why someone like Aisha, who knew how to teleport, would take the carriage away. This really stumped Sing. He searched all over the orc wasteland. Where could he find this thing? In the end, Sing was out of ideas. He found an orc chariot and brought it over. Jilin looked at him with a sad face, then looked at Bane and the Dwarf King. He thought to himself that this thing didn't have any pods. Bane also looked terrible. He looked at Jilin and said, "Why don't you just move the bed? What if it falls?" Jilin glared at him. "If it falls and breaks, do you think the cannon of light can still be saved?" Chapter 204. Bane thought about it seriously and felt that it should not be possible. Even if the sacred Book of Light was really like what the people of the Saimai Empire thought and could bring back the dead, there should at least be a complete set of bones. At the height that Jilin was flying, if Staya accidentally fell, Bane felt that even Jilin would not be able to find all of Staya's body. "Hurry up. I'll help you look after it," the Dwarf King said anxiously. Jilin thought about it and felt that he was still a little worried. In the end, it was Sing who thought about it seriously and found a cage used by the orcs to hold captives and handed it to Jilin. Bane looked at the bloodstains on the cage and could not help but tremble. He could even imagine the despair in the hearts of the humans who had been imprisoned here. It was probably as hopeless as a monk who had been caught by a monster but no monkey came to save him. Bane even imagined what the cage was for. In the story, a monster said that if they did not keep the captives for 2 days, they would taste sour. That monster said it with absolute certainty. How many people had he eaten to be able to sum up this experience and lesson? Sing looked at Bane's pale face and it was not difficult to guess what he was thinking. After all, it was rare to see a humanoid creature like Aisha who could remain calm in the Beast God Mountain. "This cage is used to hold our orc prisoners of war," Sing said. In the past, tribes often fought with each other. Orcs who were captured alive would be locked in cages like this and then used to exchange resources with other tribes. "Oh." Bane instantly sighed in relief. "So it's not human blood?" "Yes, we orcs never take human prisoners. We kill them on the spot," Sing said seriously. "The orcs don't have any extra food." Bane swallowed hard. The corners of his mouth twitched, but he did not laugh. This time, Jilin did not disappear suddenly. Instead, he told the tens of thousands of orcs that he was going to get them some weapons and equipment. This was Sing's strong request. The Dwarf King also said that the weapons would live up to the name of the dwarves, and that they would be the best weapons. Moreover, he promised that there would be more than one for each person. The beast men cheered thunderously, and the cheers of tens of thousands of people soared into the sky. To be able to own a well-made weapon was the dream of every beast-man warrior. Not to mention the work of the dwarves. In the sky, Jilin transformed into a streak of red light and flew at high speed. He was holding a huge iron cage in his left hand, which contained the unconscious Staya and Bane. On the other hand sat the Dwarf King and Sing. "Why are you here?" The Dwarf King looked at Sing and asked. "I need to take a look at the dwarven arsenal," Sing said. "You don't trust the dwarves' craftsmanship?" The dwarf suddenly raised his eyebrows. He said in a deep voice. "How is this possible? The dwarves' skills were a legend in the hearts of the beast men. How could I doubt it?" Sing said hurriedly. "I just want to take a look." Hearing Sing's words, the Dwarf King nodded in agreement. After all, Sing was a legendary powerhouse, and he had given him enough face. "Then what about the beastmen?" "Without you, won't the beastmen be in a mess?" the Dwarf King asked. "The beastmen are different from the dwarves." "Why do you say that?" "The beastmen are in a mess, and it can't be that messy. The Orc King doesn't care about anything. No matter what your attitude is, the tribes under you will still fight as usual. Basically, no one will listen to you. The only important use of the Orc King is to give the order to attack during the war with the humans. Only at that time, all the beastmen will listen to you, and the Orc King will have the illusion that he can command the entire beastmen. It would be better if you gave the order to retreat, because they wouldn't even care about you. Speaking of this, Jilin nodded slightly, showing that he agreed. He thought to himself that if he hadn't lit the firewall back then, he might not have been able to stop the millions of beastmen. Moreover, according to Sing, he was the most authoritative Orc King in the history of the beastmen, the kind that everyone supported. The Dwarf King looked at Sing quietly. In the end, he didn't say anything and just nodded. As a king, he knew that Sing's words must be exaggerated, because there couldn't be such a leisurely king in the world. When Sing was at the Beast God Mountain, he must have been working hard for the beastmen all night. Now, those remote and weak beastmen tribes hadn't starved to death yet. This was the best proof. Sing must have made all the necessary arrangements before he came out. However, since Sing said so, he planned to listen to him. Jilin flew very quickly. He set off from the southernmost Orc wasteland. In order to bypass the natural barrier, he passed by the Nanshin Empire and the Saimai Empire. He flew a curve before returning to the Red World. Jilin looked at the entrance of the Red Dragon Palace and hesitated. Did he go the wrong way? A huge wall made of red stone stood in front of him. If Jilin didn't know that it was absolutely impossible, he would have thought that the humans took advantage of his absence and occupied the Red Dragon Palace. They robbed him of all his treasures and then arrogantly built a city gate in front of his house to prevent him from entering. Is it necessary? Jilin looked at the Dwarf King and asked. This was obviously the work of the dwarves. However, as Jilin said, building a city gate in this barren land was superfluous. Enemies who could come here wouldn't be blocked by a city gate. Enemies who could be blocked by this thing also wouldn't be able to come here, they should be used to it. The Dwarf King chuckled. Then how do we get in? Bane asked. There obviously weren't any soldiers patrolling on the city wall. Come to think of it, even the dwarves wouldn't be so bored. However, if Jilin directly made a hole, it was obviously not suitable. After all, it was built by their own people. The Dwarf King didn't say anything more. He walked quickly to the door and made some noise. Then, the door opened automatically with a loud rumbling sound amidst the tremors of the earth. The Dwarf King didn't even turn around to greet Jilin. Instead, he walked over by himself. Jilin carried the cage and followed in. Only Bane was stunned. After a while, he realized that only he and Sing were left standing together. Bane's heart suddenly tightened. He put his hand on the long sword at his waist and glanced at Sing carefully. Then, he hurried to catch up with Jilin. So, only Sing was left to look at the door alone. This thing was undoubtedly the work of the dwarves. It looked very rough, but in fact, it was very delicate. The dwarves' building must have a mechanism. This seemed to be a characteristic of the dwarves. Even if it was such a useless city gate, it had to be equipped with a mechanism that could open automatically. Only the dwarves could make such a mechanism. If the city gate used to defend against enemies had such a mechanism, then the potential risk would be greatly increased. The significance of the city gate's existence would also be greatly reduced. To put it simply, this kind of mechanism was completely superfluous. Sing didn't believe that the dwarves didn't know about it. This could only be said to be the last stubbornness of the dwarves. Sing let out a long sigh of relief when he thought of this. Previously, he didn't believe that Jilin could bring the entire dwarf race here. He felt that it was simply impossible. But now, he believed it. Since the dwarves were really here, then the time for the revival of the orcs was really coming. Suddenly, a burst of earth-shattering cheers came from underground. It was so loud that the ground under Sing's feet was trembling. Sing was even more certain. The dwarves put down their work underground and cheered heartily. They jumped and screamed as if they had gone mad. They hugged everyone around them vigorously. Then, they patted each other's back excitedly. There were even dwarves who took out a continuous gunpowder steel cannon and fired at the sky. They took this opportunity to vent the excitement in their hearts. The dwarves were so excited. Naturally, it was not simply because their king had returned. It was because their king stood on the high platform in the center, holding up the treasure that was emitting a fierce golden light. After attracting everyone's attention, he said a sentence. "My compatriots, this is the god's spirit." No one doubted the dwarf king's words because no dwarf would joke about this thing. The legendary god's spirit had appeared in front of them. They would be the legendary generation that could forge the god's spirit. For the dwarves, compared with forging the god's spirit, everything was not worth mentioning. The dwarf king slowly raised his hand. All the dwarves stopped talking and remained motionless, looking at him with burning eyes. With so many people motionless, it was easy to give a strange feeling that time had stopped. My compatriots, the god's spirit forging plan that the dwarves have been thinking about for thousands of years begins now. Oh! Once again, the cheers shook the sky. Jilin hid in the dark, quietly looking at the dwarves, feeling a little interesting. Looking at the red dragon palace that had changed its appearance and looked like a real palace, he felt that bringing the dwarves here was the right decision. Unlike Batel and the others, who said that they would build a castle for him, they only dug out a cave in the end. At that time, he was very satisfied. Batel was now kneeling on one knee beside Jilin. "My lord, you're back." "Yes." "What's that in your hand?" "Oh, it's nothing. I'm going to take a nap." "You don't have to care about what the dwarves do. Also, if I don't wake up in a year, wake me up." "Yes." "Bane," Jilin suddenly called. "Yes?" "I know you don't want to stay here." "Yes." "Go to the Divine Dragon Empire." "Yes?" "Go and explore and find out about the Elven Island. Whether Stya can wake up or not depends on you." "This. How do I go?" "Easy." Jilin smiled. "Thank you for your recommendation votes. Collection. Subscription. I'm really grateful." Chapter 205. In the letter that Aisha had left for Jilin, Jilin had conveyed the main idea to Bane. Although Jilin's words were incoherent and his logic was a mess, Bane still clearly understood what he meant. Therefore, Bane knew that he would have to go to the legendary Elf Island. However, he did not expect that Jilin would actually let him go alone, easy to say. Bane looked at Jilin in surprise, his voice becoming somewhat sharp. "You and I have never been to the Divine Dragon Empire. I don't even know the way. How can I go? Also, do you know how far away the Divine Dragon Empire is?" "This is the westernmost side." "That's the easternmost side. This might not be much to you, but to me, I can't reach it even if I walk for 1 or 2 years. Jilin patted Bane's shoulder and said, "Don't worry. Even if you don't know the way, someone knows." "You know?" Bane looked at Jilin. According to his understanding, Jilin should not have been to the Divine Dragon Empire either. "It knows." Jilin raised his hand and snapped his fingers. Suddenly, a wyvern flew out of nowhere and circled above Bane's head before landing beside Jilin. Its entire body lay on the ground, not moving at all. Bane was stunned. From what humans knew, wyverns were creatures that had never been so docile and obedient. Moreover, only the Divine Dragon Empire had wyverns. "This is?" Bane asked even though he already knew the answer. "Let it carry you and fly to the Divine Dragon Empire. It knows the way. Aisha told me about the origins of these fellows." Bane looked at Jilin. "You killed all their dragon knights and left these few wyverns behind. Then, you let this fellow bring me to the Divine Dragon Empire. When we get there, won't I be torn into pieces?" "It's okay. It will come back when we get there," Jilin said. "No one should recognize it." "It can come back? Wasn't it raised by the Divine Dragon Empire? Don't mind these details. Take this and ask around about the Elven Island. I can only rely on you for this." After all, in human terms, you are the only human in the Red faction. If I rule the world in the future, how about I make you the king of humans? Scram! Bane pushed Jilin hard, but he didn't dare to use too much force because he knew he couldn't move him. Bane glanced at the bag that Jilin handed over. He opened the bag and took a look inside. He gasped. The bag was filled with gold. Bane looked at Jilin in astonishment. He clearly understood that there was no possibility of any change in this matter. After all, Jilin had already paid for it. Bane didn't say anything else. Under Jilin's gaze, he put away the gold uneasily and climbed onto the back of the flying dragon. Be careful, Jilin said. Okay. When Bane climbed onto the back of the flying dragon, it snorted in dissatisfaction, making Bane's heart jump. Jilin glanced at it indifferently. The flying dragon immediately stopped snorting. It stood up, flapped its wings, and flew out of the crater above its head. It flew toward the east with ease. Jilin looked in the direction that the flying dragon flew for a while. Finally, he retracted his gaze and lowered his head. He fell into deep thought. Ever since he met Aisha, this woman seemed to be planning something. It was her idea to capture Princess Staya. Then, he directly broke the Xingming formation in Xingming City. After that, it was also Aisha who told him that there was something called snow in the world. Then, they went to the Snow Wind Empire. She and Bane went together to accept the mission of helping people find the dagger. In the end, they didn't know how it turned into sneaking into the Duke's mansion. After that, they went to Morag with the Duke. This matter was too suspicious. With Aisha's temperament, how could she do such a thankless thing? She should have stopped abruptly when the matter turned into sneaking into the Duke's mansion, decisively giving up. This was in line with Aisha's temperament. And in the contact with the dwarves, he logically had the idea of wanting a weapon. This matter clicked with the dwarves' years-long wish. So, he went to the Middle Empire. This was nothing. But before that, there were two suspicious places. He took a map and asked Staya and Aisha to see. Aisha recognized it at a glance and told him that this was the capital of the Middle Empire. Aisha didn't have the photographic memory of the dragons, so she must have seen this map many times to recognize it at a glance. Moreover, the Dwarf King said that before he left, Aisha had a conversation with him. In this conversation, Aisha acted as if she knew nothing about the god's soul. But this was impossible. Aisha was the closest human to the gods in the world because she could directly trade with the god of darkness through the Dark Holy Book. If she didn't know about the god's soul, then, and now, Aisha gave him a letter that forced him to go to the Divine Dragon Empire after he went to the Saimai Empire, the Snow Wind Empire, the Middle Empire, and the Nanshin Empire. She wanted him to go to all the human empires? Was she playing with dragons? What was she trying to do? The more Jilin thought about it, the more upset he felt. It didn't feel good to be led by the nose by a creature that was much lower than him. Batel saw that Jilin didn't move for a long time and asked, "My lord, what's wrong?" "Oh, nothing. I was distracted." Sleep, I haven't slept for a long time. If I don't sleep now, it will be a disgrace to the dragons. The Chaos Temple is ready. What is it? The gold that my lord brought back has been laid out. Ha ha, that's not bad. Well done. Thank you, my lord. Oh, right. Do you know about the elves? Yes. You know? You have never been out of the volcano. How do you know? I don't know, but I have known since I was born. Jilin was silent for a while and nodded slowly. He felt that this should be the same as the dragon's bloodline inheritance. Tell me. The elves have been living in seclusion on a small island in the vast sea since they were born, 2 days later. In a hidden forest at the border of the Divine Dragon Empire. A brown megalosaurus descended from the sky and quickly disappeared into the forest. Bane hurriedly rolled off the dragon's back and ran behind a big tree in a panic. Then, the sound of flowing water could be heard. After relieving himself, Bane let out a long sigh of relief and slowly walked out from behind the tree. He shook his head vigorously. After being blown by strong winds for 2 days, his head was still dizzy. Although this fellow didn't fly as fast as Jilin or as high as Jilin, it flew faster than Jilin. Even Bane, who wasn't familiar with it at all, could clearly sense this fellow's true emotions during these 2 days. Hurry up and finish this and go home. Now, Bane realized one thing: not all dragons could understand human language. Bane leaned against the tree weakly and took 2 deep breaths. Then, he remembered to take a look at the wyvern. F***ck. Bane couldn't help but curse when he saw it. In this forest, the leaves rustled when the wind blew, and the cicadas chirped brightly. In the depths of the vegetation, the scenery was pleasant and relaxed. However, there was no sign of the wyvern. Bane finally understood. It left after putting him down. Isn't this too impatient? Ben calmed down and climbed up a tall tree. He reached out his hand to block the sunlight and looked around like a bird's eye view. He urgently needed to find the human gathering place and find the Adventurers Guild to ask for information. Adventurers from all over the world had gathered there. However, to the local authorities, they were just some fugitives of unknown origins. He didn't stand out at all among them. Suddenly, a cloud of black smoke appeared in Bane's vision and rushed into the sky. It was extremely eye-catching. Bane's expression changed. He felt a little strange. That was because there was only thick smoke and no fire. Bane, who grew up in the village and was close to the forest, was very sure that it wasn't a mountain fire. It was more like a smoke signal from the human army. No matter what it was good that there were people. Bane decided to go and take a look. Even if he couldn't get the help of the army, he could follow them to find a way out. Bane made up his mind and jumped down the tree. He flew toward the smoke. Bane's movements were fast, but they didn't make much noise. He was like a cat, fast and light. Her movements were vigorous and agile, like a startled swan. Not long after, Bane was like an assassin and found his way to the army. He avoided 4 or 5 patrolling scouts on the way. Bane judged that the scale of this army wasn't big. It was at most 200. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so few scouts. The target this time shouldn't be too difficult. Otherwise, these scouts wouldn't be so casual. Sure enough, Bane's judgment was right. More than 100 soldiers set up a battle array in front of a dilapidated village. There was smoke and dust all around. This meant that there were soldiers guarding all around. The place had been surrounded by the army. It seemed that they didn't want to leave a way out for the people inside. Kill them. They are all evil demons of the demon dragon sect. Don't let any of them go. Kill them all. Following the command of the leading soldier, the soldiers began to charge. They easily broke through the wall that looked so dilapidated that it couldn't even be considered a fence. Bane looked at the leading soldier and his eyes became sharp. Because he had already heard the screams coming from the village. There were old people. There were women. There were even young children's voices. This group of soldiers was indiscriminately killing the villagers. No, this kind of behavior should be called a massacre. Thank you for your recommendation votes. Chapter 206. Bane's eyes turned red as he listened to the screams. His whole body trembled as he clenched his teeth tightly. He placed one hand on the ground and subconsciously grabbed the soil. Bastard. Bane stared at the leader of the soldiers. Although he was furious, he could still maintain his consciousness. He knew that it was not the time to rush out. Let's go. The leader of the soldiers saw that his men had entered the village and felt that the situation was settled. Then, he led his personal guards and slowly entered the village. Bane's eyes lit up. The opportunity was here. Bane took a deep breath and activated stealth. He carefully sneaked into the village. He knew that he was not Jilin. He did not have the ability to crush everything. Not to mention Jilin, even if Staya was here, she would not put these 100 soldiers in her eyes. But he could not. he was only a small thief who had just entered the third tier. Although in the eyes of ordinary people, he could barely be considered a strong person, but he was still far from being able to fight against 100 people. Not to mention 100 specially trained soldiers. If he wanted to save those people, he could only take the risk and hope that he could capture the leader first. And this also required an opportunity. If the villagers were strong enough and could create an opportunity for Bane, then Bane would help them. If not, Bane could only find another opportunity to avenge them in the future. Not everyone could be like Qi Lin, who could take the head of a general from an army of 1,000,000 soldiers and burn them to ashes with a flip of his hand. Under normal circumstances, you would be dead before you could even see the general. Bane quietly followed behind the leader of the soldiers. His stealth was very clever and no one noticed him. Unfortunately, the leader of the soldiers was surrounded by his soldiers and did not give him any opportunity. "Big brother, look!" Suddenly, a soldier pointed to the front and shouted. "What's wrong?" "Report." Those evil cult sorcerers had been prepared for this. "There's a tunnel under the village." "Tunnel? How big is it? Why didn't the scouts find it?" "It's currently unknown. The tunnel was too complicated. And the entrance is too well hidden, so old Lu didn't find it." "Where's the entrance?" "Dragon King Temple." "Take me there." "Yes." The leader of the soldiers also began to run. Following the soldier who reported the news, they soon arrived in front of the Dragon King Temple mentioned by the cavalry. "Is this the place?" The leader of the soldiers looked at the inconspicuous temple in front of him and asked aloud. The temple was built with large pieces of yellow bricks. Although it looked sturdy, it was extremely rough. The door of the temple was not big and could only allow 2 or 3 people to pass through side by side. Such Dragon King temples could be seen everywhere in the Divine Dragon Empire. "Yes," the soldier replied. The leader of the soldiers poked his head in to take a look. It was pitch black and he couldn't see anything clearly. However, he rolled his eyes and made up his mind. Light the smoke signal at the entrance of the temple and smoke everyone out. At the same time, set up archers at the entrance of the temple. Shoot whoever comes out. What is this? Hurry up and carry out the order. Our men have also gone down." The leader of the soldiers was stunned when he heard this. Then, he looked around. Only then did he realize that there weren't many of his men at the entrance of the temple. "Idiots!" The leader of the soldiers shouted angrily. He slammed his sword into the ground, creating a pit. "The situation in the tunnel is unclear. What if there are traps? What if there is an ambush? What are you going down for? Our brothers are afraid that there are other exits in this tunnel. We are afraid that the evil sect members will escape. You. Forget it. How are the brothers who went down now? Nothing out of the ordinary so far. Tell all the brothers above to go down. Provide support. Since they have already gone down, why don't they all go down? I don't believe that a motley crew can do anything to my brothers from the Flying Fish Battalion." The soldier was shocked when he heard this. He said anxiously, "Go down? What if? What are you afraid of? Even if it is a mountain of swords and a sea of flames, I dare to take my brothers and charge through it." Bane watched as the soldiers walked into the tunnel one by one with torches and disappeared into the darkness. However, 3 people stood at the entrance of the temple and didn't go in. "Big brother, aren't we going to hold the line?" The soldier standing to the left of the leader turned his head and asked. "If you want to cross a river, you have to know how deep the water is." The leader said faintly. "What do you mean?" The soldier on the left asked with his eyes wide open. "Big brother, you mean to let those people explore the path for us and test the water," the soldier on the right said. "Oh." The soldier on the left nodded as if he had suddenly understood. However, he stopped abruptly halfway through his sentence. The leader of the soldiers turned his head in surprise. Then, his eyes widened. He saw a small black arrow piercing into the soldier's back. The soldier's eyes rolled back and he fell to the ground. "Second brother." The soldier on the right shouted. "Who is it?" The leader shouted. "Come out." Bane couldn't help but shake his head in the dark. "If I would come out just because you asked me to, why would I hide?" Bane cursed in his heart. He collected his thoughts and raised his hand to the soldier who was holding the body and crying loudly. On his wrist was a set of intricate hidden swords that the dwarves had specially made for him. This set of hidden swords could be activated silently. Furthermore, it was dipped in the poison that Aisha had left behind. As for Aisha, she had a hard criterion for poison, and that was to kill as soon as it touched blood. Once again, the poison arrow was shot out silently. The soldier who was crying suddenly stopped crying. Silently, two of his life and death brothers had lost their lives. The leader of the soldiers narrowed his eyes into a dangerous slit. "What kind of hero are you to attack people in the dark? Come out if you dare." Bane didn't say anything. He only aimed his hand at the leader again. A soft ding sounded. The leader seemed to have sensed the trajectory of the arrow. He raised his arm and blocked the arrow with his arm shield. Bane clicked his tongue. He knew it wouldn't be that simple. "I am a disciple of Mount Bearing Moon. My defensive skills are the specialty of my sect. Your arrow can't hurt me. Come out." "Nonsense. Who knows what Mount Bearing Moon is?" Bane cursed in a low voice as he adjusted the hidden arrow mechanism in his hand. "Beast. You're worse than a beast. Jilin has never killed a child." This was the work of the dwarves. Of course, there would be mechanisms. This hidden arrow had two modes. One was like just now, silently killing without a trace. The other was like a thunderbolt, breaking the enemy's front line. By the time Bane chose a new position, the hidden arrow in his hand had been adjusted. Bane's fingers moved slightly. A series of mechanical sounds sounded. Da-da-da. Bane could feel that the hidden string in the hidden arrow suddenly tightened. Then, there was a bang sound. The short arrow left the string and made an ear-piercing sound. The recoil from the short arrow made half of Bane's arm numb. Such a huge movement naturally couldn't be hidden from an expert who was on full alert. The soldier determined Bane's position in time and raised his arm shield in advance. Dang! A light sound was heard. The short arrow easily penetrated the arm shield and pierced through the soldier's breastplate. However, at this moment, the power of the short arrow seemed to have been exhausted. It couldn't break through the last invisible barrier. What a strong force! The soldier looked at the translucent arm shield and said with some lingering fear, "What realm are you?" Bane walked out of the forest openly. He had already given up on the idea of killing this guy with his hidden sword, 3rd level, late stage. The soldier looked at Bane and said, "There was no need to be secretive. They had already fought to this extent. The other party must have already seen through his strength." "Oh." Bane nodded. It was about the same as him. "Who are you, sir? You actually dare to make an enemy of the Divine Dragon Empire's army. Do you know that this is treason? Isn't it natural for an empire to betray an empire that slaughters its own people who can't fight back? Those are the demons of the demonic dragon cult. Those old people and children too? Those who achieve great things don't care about trifles. Moreover, they are harboring the demons of the cult. They deserve to die. It's you who deserves to die. Haha, you only know how to sneak attack like a mouse. Come and try it. I want to kill you to avenge my 2 brothers. Quickly tell me your name. I don't kill nameless people with my spear. Bastard. I'm your father." Bane couldn't help but blurt out after holding back for a long time. After scolding, he felt that something was wrong. It seemed that he was scolding himself as well. The soldier's face turned purple with anger. He raised his spear and rushed forward. Bane clenched his teeth and finally made up his mind. He let go of the black dagger in his hand and took out the long sword hidden behind his back. Bane waved the long sword. The sword was like a swimming dragon. Summon, not return. After one move, Bane carried the soldier's head and walked towards the temple. With this, he believed that he could intimidate those soldiers. Just like how he intimidated a pack of wolves. That soldier obviously had many tricks up his sleeve. Even after he died, he still had a look of disbelief on his face. But in fact, his death was not unjust. Even Jilin felt that the exquisite sword move created by the Sword Saint was difficult to deal with. He could only break the sword with brute force. Faced with such a sword move, the soldier could only die with his eyes wide open. Not long after, groups of soldiers ran out of the temple in a panic. They shouted, "Commander is dead." After a while, the villagers came out of the tunnel. Looking at the soldiers running away, they let out excited cheers. Bane stood in the middle of the crowd. His expression was so gratified that it was disgusting. Chapter 207. Bane did not expect things to be so easy. All he did was carry that person's head and walk to the front of the enemy formation. Before he could say anything, those soldiers ran away as if they had seen a ghost. The quality of the Divine Dragon Empire's soldiers was not very good. Suddenly, a hunched and trembling old man with a walking stick walked up to Bane excitedly. Without saying anything, he wanted to kneel before Bane. "Hero! Thank you for saving our village." Bane was shocked. No matter how he looked at it, this old man could not be younger than 80 years old. If he was not an orphan, this old man would probably be older than his grandfather. How could he accept the fact that he had knelt down in front of him? "Old man, please don't. This little one doesn't deserve it. It's my duty to help when I see injustice." Bane reacted quickly and caught the old man before his knees hit the ground. "Old man, why did those soldiers attack you? It would have been better if this matter was not mentioned." The moment it was mentioned, the old man's eyes reddened. "Those damned bastards said that we were harboring evil sect members and wanted to exterminate us." When Bane saw the old man's pitiful expression, he could not help but empathize with him. He waved his fist angrily and said, "Those bastards. If you want to condemn someone, why worry about the pretext? How could they say such obvious slander? They are simply shameless." Yes. Hero is right. They are a bunch of bastards. "Old man, there's no need to be so polite. How can I be called a hero?" "Then, how about this old man call you young hero? You are definitely worthy of it." "Ha, you flatter me." "Right, since there are no evil sect members, why did the soldiers surround this place?" "Oh, it's because 2 days ago, a little brother from the Red Dragon sect came to our village covered in injuries." "Ah. Isn't that an evil?" "Nonsense. How can the Red Dragon sect be an evil sect? Everyone in our village is a believer of the Red Dragon sect. How can we stand by and watch when our fellow sect members are in trouble?" The old man's righteous words gained the approval of the surrounding people. Right. The village chief is right. The dragon flames will never be extinguished. Purify the world. Purge the world. Bestow upon me the blazing holy flame. Red Dragon God. Bane looked at the fanatical expressions of the people around him. He felt cold sweat dripping down his back and his vision turning black. It turned out that these people were all evil cultists. Didn't that mean that those soldiers were the good guys? Am I helping the tyrant? Just as Bane was at a loss for what to do amidst the crowd's cheers, a child suddenly walked up to him and whispered, Brother, come with me. Someone wants to see you." Bane lowered his head and looked at the little girl's innocent eyes. His heart suddenly calmed down. No matter what, a child like this must be innocent. It was wrong to want to hurt such a child. No matter what. Bane followed the child into the temple. The underground tunnel of the temple was indeed winding. After 7 or 8 turns, they finally arrived at their destination. "Big brother, I've brought him to you," the girl shouted in a crisp voice. At this moment, there was only darkness around them. Even Bane did not notice that there was someone else here. "Oh, thank you, Xiao Tuanzi." A weak voice sounded in the darkness. Following that, a flame lit up without warning. A torch that was originally stuck in the wall was lit. The flame lit up the entire space. A young man with a pale face was lying on a clean bed. It was not hard to tell that he was seriously injured. Bane first looked at the young man, then at the torch. The torch was a few meters away from the young man. It was impossible for him to light it in such a state and then lie back down without alerting Bane. So there was only one possibility. This person was a fire magician. "You're called Xiaotuanzi?" Bane said to the little girl. "Yes. Can you leave first? I have something to talk to this big brother." The little girl hesitated and looked at the young man. Only when the young man nodded slightly did the little girl nod her head vigorously and run out with a smile. Bane watched the little girl leave. When he saw the little girl turn a corner, Bane immediately drew his sword from his waist. He pointed his hidden blade at the young man. He was already sure that this guy was the evil cult demon that the soldiers had mentioned. Cough cough. "You're the one who helped the villagers defeat the Empire's soldiers?" The young man was fearless and calm. "If that's the case, then thank you very much. My name is Lei Sei, may I know your name? You're the one who lured the soldiers here." Bane did not let his guard down. "Yes. You knew that the innocent villagers would be hurt. You're just trying to divert the disaster. You should be punished," Bane said coldly. Lei Sei looked at Bane strangely. "From your tone. You're from the Middle Empire?" "No." "Oh, then you've been in the Middle Empire for a while. That country's culture is very deep and has a strong influence." Ding! A short black arrow pierced into the wall next to Lei Sei's ear without warning and made a crisp sound. Lei Sei looked at Bane and for the first time, there was some emotion in his eyes. "My arrow is poisonous," Bane said in a threatening tone. What he meant was that he could easily kill Lei Sei if he wanted to, so he was the one who had the upper hand. Lei Sei heard this and his nose twitched. His thin eyebrows furrowed. "It's obvious that the smell is too strong." "You can smell that?" "If you smell it carefully in a semi-enclosed space like this." The person who made the poison obviously did not hide the smell. "Who are you?" Lei Sei, I'm not talking about the name. Red Dragon follower. Do I need you to tell me that? Then there's nothing to say, you're not as simple as you say. How do you know? First of all, you're proficient in medicine. Just because I can tell that the arrow is poisonous? Yes. Stop joking. Normally, weapons with a strange smell are most likely poisonous. Secondly, you know about formations. What do you mean? When I came in just now, I sensed that this tunnel coincides with the Middle Empire's formations. No wonder those soldiers couldn't find anyone after coming down for so long. I admire your knowledge. I really didn't expect to meet someone proficient in the Middle Empire's formations here. Now can you tell me where you came from? What are you trying to do by hiding here? I'm really not lying to you. I'm just an ordinary person. The only thing that's different about me is that I have a wish. Let's hear it. I want to overthrow the Divine Dragon Empire. Bane almost fainted. He thought about how he had just helped the third prince take over his father's position a few days ago, and now he heard that this guy wanted to overthrow the Divine Dragon Empire. What kind of fate was this? Who are you trying to fool? Do you think that the Divine Dragon Empire is a child on the side of the road? You think you can overthrow it just because you say so? You managed to force those 100-odd soldiers into such a sorry state. How are you going to overthrow the Divine Dragon Empire? That's why I joined the Red Dragon Church. Now, the legendary expert Flay is the church master. She has the power to overthrow the Divine Dragon Empire. Bane sneered. He felt that this person was simply lying without thinking it through. It looks like you don't believe me. I can't believe anyone with a brain. Thinking about it, it's almost time. What time? As soon as Bane finished speaking, he heard a rush of footsteps. Bane turned his head and looked over by the light of the fire. 4 villagers jogged over while carrying a stretcher. The villagers nodded at Bane and walked past him, nimbly placing Rhys on the stretcher. Rhys smiled at Bane and said, "Come with me. Let's see the Divine Dragon Empire's darkness for ourselves. After you see it, I believe you will understand my thoughts." Chapter 208. Bane helplessly lowered his arm. He couldn't kill Lacey on the spot in front of these villagers. He could understand how important Lacey was to these villagers. After all, this was someone that the entire village would rather go against the Empire to protect. Bane helplessly shook his head when he saw that they had already walked out. In the end, he still followed them. Ever since these 4 villagers came in, the initiative was no longer in his hands. Bane followed the stretcher all the way out of the village and into the forest. Then, he realized that many people had already gathered here. Most of the villagers that he had seen earlier were here. It seemed like the entire village had already come out. When the villagers saw him, they even greeted him with friendly expressions. Bane felt a little strange. He thought to himself, why did everyone come out? There are so many mosquitoes in the forest. Could it be that they knew that they had committed a serious crime and wanted to escape because of the conflict with the army? Even so, there was no need to be in such a hurry. No matter what, they had to clean up, right? What are you trying to do? Bane was a little confused. Look, it's here. Lacey pointed to the sky. Bane looked in the direction that Lacey was pointing and saw a black shadow flying towards him from the horizon. Bane couldn't help but open his mouth wide in shock. This was because he was far too familiar with that black shadow. He immediately recognized that it was the silhouette of a dragon. However, it was many times smaller than Jilin and looked a little comical. Bane was probably the only person in the entire continent who could see the Divine Dragon Empire's flying dragon as comical. "Dragon Knight," Lacey said in a gloomy voice as he stared at the flying dragon. "Dragon Knight?" Bane repeated doubtfully. "Are there dragons that can be used as mounts? You are so knowledgeable, yet you don't know about the Divine Dragon Empire's strongest fighting force, the Dragon Knight?" Lacey was surprised by Bane's reaction. Bane shook his head, indicating that he really didn't know about this. Although Aisha and Staya, who were really knowledgeable, had taught him a lot of knowledge about the various countries on the continent, the 2 of them had never talked about the Dragon Knight before. Because no one dared to mention these 3 words in front of Jilin. Moreover, they still weren't sure how far away Jilin could hear. "Quiet," Rhys suddenly said in a low voice. The villagers behind him all shut their mouths obediently. For a Dragon Knight, this distance is already very close. "Dragons have excellent hearing, so we can't let it discover us," Rhys explained to Bane in a low voice, afraid that his recklessness would implicate these people. Bane glanced at him and thought, "I know this better than you." "Watch carefully," Rhys sneered. Bane turned his head and saw the wyvern carrying a human flying calmly above the village. Then, he casually spat out a fireball, turned around, and left. This series of actions could be described as smooth as flowing water. It ended very quickly. The wyvern and the Dragon Knight didn't even look at the fireball before it landed on the ground. What did he mean by disdain? Bane felt that the wyvern's action of spitting the fireball at the village was like a person walking on the road and casually spitting on the ground. However, the difference was that when a person spat, the ground would at most be a little dirty. 2 passers-by with bad eyesight would just step on it and clean it up. However, the result of this wyvern spitting out a fireball was that the entire village turned into a raging sea of fire. Bane broke out in a cold sweat. Only now did he understand why these people were hiding here. If he and these people were still in the village at this time, their fates would naturally be self-evident. "This is..." Bane turned his head and asked when he saw that the wyvern had already flown far away. "Can't believe it?" Rhys laughed. "How dare the Divine Dragon Empire kill innocent people so brazenly?" Bane gritted his teeth. "This is called killing a chicken to warn the monkey. It's better to kill 1,000 innocents than to let one go. These are the lives of 200 or 300 people. To an empire like this, it's not worth mentioning." Bane shook his head slowly. There's a saying in the Middle Empire, the law can't punish the masses. Their emperor also has a saying, the execution of 9 generations of your family. Why aren't you angry? Bane suddenly discovered something strange. Apart from him, everyone here appeared very calm. It didn't seem like the reaction of someone whose house had just been burned down. This is the Divine Dragon Empire's normal method of dealing with evil cults like us. We're already used to it, Rhys said. The villagers behind him nodded repeatedly. These people are all members of the demonic dragon church? Bane looked at Rhys and asked, You're all together? That's right, but we are from the Red Dragon Church. Rhys nodded. Everyone in this village is a member of the Red Dragon Church. The higher-ups received news a few days ago that the Divine Dragon Empire's people discovered this place. They sent me to save the lives of these church members. However, I didn't expect that the leader of the soldiers to be so capable. He and those soldiers made me look very miserable. I didn't expect that you would kill them. But, even if you are indeed members of the Red Dragon Church, what wrong did such a young child do? Do you know how these people gathered together? Do you know why I want to overthrow the Divine Dragon Empire? Aren't these people originally from the same village? Bane asked. No, these people are pitiful people who have lost their homes. They were settled here after joining the Red Dragon Church. As for me, on the day my village turned into a sea of fire, I was fishing in the river. Your village was also burned down by the Dragon Knights? Rhys nodded lightly. The nobles of the Divine Dragon Empire relied on the help of the dragons and became more and more unrestrained in recent years. Their oppression of the people was very tragic. Originally, it was still tolerable. However, ever since the Empire lost 20 Dragon Knights a few years ago, they became even worse. They made our lives unbearably miserable. These people also don't want to join some new and unknown religion, but we need a belief that can support us to continue living. The great red Megalosaurus has descended to the world. He is the messenger of God. He has supreme power, and the flames behind him can burn all the filth in the world. He punishes the wicked and rewards the virtuous. The weak will no longer be bullied, and fairness will reappear in the world. The people will no longer fear the threat of flames, and the wicked will no longer use the flames to harm others. This is because all the flames belong to the Red Dragon God. The innocent wyverns will no longer be bewitched by the wicked. This is because they have seen their true belonging. When the Red Dragon God looks down on the world, all ghosts and demons will vanish. When Rhys recited the metaphysical words in a sacred tone, the villagers behind him all knelt down and kowtowed to the sky with pious faces. They shouted, Dragon flames will never be extinguished. Purify the world. Purge the world. Dragon flames will never be extinguished. Purify the world. Purge the world. Only Bane stood there awkwardly. He didn't know whether to move or not. He listened to the slogans of the villagers and felt that it was not too much to call them a cult. Listening to them, they wanted to burn the whole world. Purify the world. How? Burn it with fire? That's called cremation, okay? Although Bane started to feel that these people were very ignorant and whimsical. But when these people kowtowed to the sky seriously and meticulously for a while, Bane felt that these people seemed to be glowing from the inside out, shining directly into his heart. He felt this kind of light from Stya's body before. This might be the unique charm of these religious believers who had a firm belief. Bane suddenly felt that these people seemed to be living a good life. Aisha told him a story. It was a conversation between a soldier and a believer. The believer said to the soldier, You are not living for yourself, because there are many people standing above you, your king, your general. The soldier asked, Then who is standing above you? The believer said, Only God. After a while, Rhys's recitation ended and the villagers all stood up. What did you recite just now? Bane asked. The Red Dragon Scripture, which is the doctrine of the Red Dragon sect, Rhys said. You have a doctrine? Bane asked curiously. Who are you looking down on? The Red Dragon Scripture is, the Church of Light has the Holy Scripture of Light, so the Red Dragon sect naturally has the Red Dragon Scripture too. What's the meaning of your act just now? It's already so obvious, I don't need to say anymore. Just say it. Young hero, do you want to join the sect? Yes. End of chapter. Omega, heh. Chapter 209. Bane straightforwardly agreed to Lacey's invitation to join the Red Dragon sect. It could even be said to be somewhat abrupt. However, this was not a rash decision. Instead, it was a decision he made after careful consideration. Firstly, Xiaochen came to the Divine Dragon Empire to gather information for Jilin. However, he was unfamiliar with the place and the people. This matter would not go smoothly at the start. As for the Red Dragon sect, it looked like it already had deep roots in the Divine Dragon Empire. Its information resources were very impressive. The Red Dragon sect could even accurately grasp the movements of the Dragon Knights. Knowing oneself and the enemy to this extent, their strength was clear. Without a doubt, joining the Red Dragon sect would help Xiaochen in gathering information on the Elf Island. Secondly, Bane could not stand the Divine Dragon Empire's way of treating human lives like grass. These people clearly looked like normal, good people. However, they were labeled as evil cult members for no reason. Yet, the Empire was going to slaughter such innocent people. Such logic did not make sense in the world. Lacey looked at Bane and blinked, not knowing what to say. "What's wrong?" Bane asked. "It's nothing. It's just that you suddenly agreed so straightforwardly. This somewhat exceeded my expectations. Are you worried that I have ulterior motives?" "That's not it. I just find it somewhat hard to figure you out. However, it's fine. After all, you saved me and so many of the sect members. I am still willing to trust you. After all, there are many people of unknown origins in my Red Dragon sect. Are you not afraid that I will harm you? In the end, you are alone. You should say the opposite." "That's true. Welcome to the sect. You are too polite, too polite." Ha ha ha, ha ha ha. 1 year later, at Auspicious Cloud City. Auspicious Cloud City was a small, unknown town at the border of the Divine Dragon Empire. It was located in the southeast of the Divine Dragon Empire, near the sea. There were few people here, so the scenery was pleasant. It was quiet but not desolate. Occasionally, 2 seagulls would fly over Auspicious Cloud City under the clear blue sky and white clouds. It was a scene of a paradise. This might be the Divine Dragon Empire's unique charm, preserving the natural environment's beauty to the greatest extent. In a tea house in Royan City, Bane was standing on an antique bench with one foot on it. He was drinking tea, cracking melon seeds, and listening to a storyteller. Melon seed shells flew out of his mouth, and his smug expression made him look like a hooligan. Even if the people around him were pointing at him, he didn't care. Instead, he raised his eyebrows and glared at her provocatively. After listening for a while, Bane felt that this storyteller should have come from the Middle Empire. After all, there were no storytellers in the Divine Dragon Empire. It was impossible for anyone to tell this story in such an authentic manner, with both spirit and form. It was exactly the same as what he had heard in the capital. That year, an enemy army attacked from the south. The banners covered the sun, and the momentum was extremely great. Just as everyone was frowning and feeling helpless, the sword Saint Guy Minghua silently appeared in front of the enemy army without anyone noticing. The sword saint drew out flowing light, and a sword light suddenly appeared between heaven and earth. The light was so bright that people couldn't open their eyes. The sword saint immediately shouted, "The sword Saint Guy Minghua is here. Who dares to take a step forward?" Everyone, guess what happened next? That million-strong army actually. Bane picked up his teacup, took a sip, and smacked his lips twice. He was familiar with this story. This time, it was the story of the sword saint blocking a million-strong army with one sword. However, according to the sword saint himself, this was pure nonsense. Continuing from the previous story, on this day, the sword Saint Guy Mingwe met with the 5 great demon kings, the 9 mountain kings, and the 4 great. Bane nodded, and spat out the melon seed rind in his mouth onto the ground, causing countless people to roll their eyes. He had also heard this story before. It was about how the sword saint killed 18 evil people with one sword, and from then on, the Middle Empire became peaceful and peaceful. Although he didn't know how the sword saint killed 18 people with one sword, since there was such a story, then he would just treat it as if it was true. Brother, is this seat taken? Just when Bane had heard 2 or 3 parts of the story, a middle-aged man wearing a white robe with an elegant temperament walked in front of him and pointed at the lunatic that Bane was stepping on with his foot, and asked politely. Bane didn't answer immediately, but first looked around the tea house, then glanced at the middle-aged man and said, "There are so many empty seats, and you insist on taking this one?" The middle-aged man smiled but didn't say anything. Bane remained silent for a while before nodding. Then, he retracted his foot and sat up straight. "Please sit." The middle-aged man smiled faintly and sat down without even wiping the stool. Then, he poured himself a cup of tea without standing on ceremony. After slowly taking a sip, he asked Bane, "Is this storyteller good?" Bane thought to himself, "You sat down for so long and didn't say anything. All you did was spout some nonsense. You are really good at showing off." "It's pretty good. I didn't expect to hear such an authentic storytelling in an inconspicuous city in the Divine Dragon Empire," Bane said with a smile. "That's good. I didn't waste a lot of effort to invite this person over," the man said with a smile. "Oh? That means you found this storyteller just for me?" "That's right. You knew that I was coming?" "That's right. You know who I am?" "Of course. It has been less than a year since you joined the Red Dragon Church, but you have already made a name for yourself as Hidden Shadow." Chapter 210. Your name has spread far and wide. Every time Bane cowed out reverberating like thunder in the ears, you would feel very awkward. Hidden Shadow? However, since everyone else was kowtowing sincerely, he could not do anything about the specter. He did not know how the Red Dragon Society obtained unpredictably, being extremely sinister. In any case, Bane quickly waved his hand and said, "You praised me too flying dragons. I am not worthy of it. There was a huge difference between the two that could be seen at a glance. No. However, since the Red Dragon Society's members claimed that Flay was their society master, she must have drawn it herself. You are too polite." She had seen Jilin before. "May I ask who you are?" "Your Excellency, Shadow. Auspicious you are not from the Divine Dragon Empire, right?" "It's an honor to meet you at last," as he looked at Bane, pulling him back from an exaggerated expression of shock as he performed a cupped fist salute to Geraint. "Why get involved in this mess? It looks like you recognized me long ago. Is it worth it to take the risk? Come, Lord City Lord. The Emperor is tyrannical. Don't stand on ceremony. Have no way to make a living." Bane grabbed a handful of sunflower seeds and handed them to Geraint. "Ruoyun City's commoners all live and work in peace and contentment. It is Lord City Lord cannot represent everyone. It is not difficult to get a portrait of you. Geraint said, "Since I am in your territory, your Excellency never shows yourself," Bane said nonchalantly. "Even if the Red Dragon Society does something major, you hide in the shadows and give advice." Bane paused and was silent for a moment. "Your Excellency took the initiative to sit with me. There was a clear scar of half a finger's length above his left eyebrow. Aren't you afraid that I will kill you on the spot?" "It was a scar left behind in a crucial battle." Bane smiled. "At that according to Dragonair's information, you've already reached the 5th mid-tier 20 years of strength. Not to mention that you've monopolized such a city. Bane used the sword of no return, after so many years, forward with no regard for his own safety and risking his life to attack. However, since I dared to appear in killing the enemy, I am naturally not afraid of you." However, the enemy gave him a backhanded slash before he died. A man in a red robe walked to his side. When Bane used the Red Dragon Society's red robe, he did not have the ability to defend against the enemy's attack. If you can get every a red robe bishop to protect you, he could not help but feel a lingering in the Red Dragon Society is quite high. Because if that slash had been slightly lower, be joking, his left eye would have been with a smile. However, even if Bane felt that this scar was still my city, Geraint said seriously as he looked at Bane, he could be considered to have truly entered the inner circle of the Red Dragon sect and gained fame in the Divine Dragon Empire. However, the other people in the shop suddenly stood up with shiny weapons in their hands. That was, from that day nobody knew where they came from. He had to go to a secret location. Even the storyteller stopped telling the story. Sometimes it was a dark room, he gently waved his fan and walked to Geraint's side. Usually, a
large
large number
hands
of
and
Red
read to
Dragon
Geraint.
sect members gathered there.
Geraint also nodded at him.
It was nothing much. This storyteller is
The main
not thing
simple.
was to exchange pleasantries.
The red-robed man's soft voice fell into
everyone would
Bane's
kowtow
ears.
to Jilin's portrait. This was an advanced
This
telepathic
chapter
technique
ends.
that the Red Dragon sect had specially researched to deal with the flying dragon's hearing. Bane could not help but roll his eyes at the red-robed man. As long as one wasn't blind, they would be able to tell that he wasn't simple. The others only stood up and took out their weapons. Only he was scurrying around. How could this be simple? This person is probably at the 6th stage. The red-robed man whispered again. Bane's mouth suddenly stiffened. He looked at Geraint and said with a wry smile, "The Castellan is so generous. To actually be able to let such a 6th-stage expert hide in auspicious Cloud City without making a name for himself." Even the dragon's eyes were hidden. Oh, Geraint seemed to have a profound meaning, so the Red Dragon sect has a complete intelligence system. Is it divided into dragon's ears and dragon's eyes? Bane smiled but did not answer. His smiling face looked unfathomable and unfathomable. In fact, those two eyes were rapidly turning in his narrowed eyes. He had miscalculated. He thought that Geraint was the only 6th-stage expert in auspicious Cloud City. But this sudden addition was enough to make all of Bane's following plans futile. But there was nothing he could do about it. Who would have thought that a Castellan with a 6th-stage cultivation base could invite a 6th-stage expert as a helper? And let him tell a story in this tea house. A 6th-stage expert, even in the Empire, was enough to become the master of a region and control the people of a region. They were usually very arrogant. How could they break their character and do this job for Geraint? However, since the matter had already happened, it was useless to think about it here. It was better to think of a way out. Since he could not defeat him, he could either use his wits, feign civility, or surrender. Bane made up his mind and said with a smile, "The auspicious Cloud City Lord has made such ample preparations to welcome us. It seems like the auspicious Cloud City Lord is really facing our Red Dragon sect as a great enemy. Of course. Your Red Dragon sect is delusional enough to overturn the universe. I have received great kindness from His Majesty, the Hero King. Naturally, we cannot live under the same sky." Geraint was calm. Now that the situation was under his control, this shadow that had been a headache for the Empire for a long time would not be able to escape. He was willing to chat with the other party for a while. This was the calmness of a victor. "I don't think so," Bane shook his head solemnly. "You and I don't necessarily need to fight to the death between us. Lord City Lord, do you know how many cities in the Divine Dragon Empire are under the secret control of the Red Dragon sect?" That's impossible." A bright light flashed in Geraint's eyes. He had never heard of this before. If what Bane said was true, then it would be too terrifying. Any city with a population of more than 10,000 can contact Divine Dragon City directly. This is especially so for the border cities. If they discover any trouble, they can even request reinforcements from the Dragon Knights. How can they be controlled by evil sect demons like you? Stop spouting nonsense. Lord City Lord is right. Bane nodded and said, "Under normal circumstances, no one can occupy the Divine Dragon Empire's cities. Even our church master, the legendary expert Flay, cannot do it. This is because the Dragon Knights might covers the entire Divine Dragon Empire. However, what if those city lords are also our people? Naturally, we can take control of the cities without anyone knowing. Lord, do you know how many city lords like you believe in the Red Dragon God? And how many city lords were directly planted by our Red Dragon sect?" "What do you mean?" Geraint said gloomily. "It's very simple. Now, the Hero King is old and muddle-headed. He massacred villages at the Divine Dragon Empire's borders. He viewed human lives as worthless. Although there was a saying, if the monarch wants the subject to die, the subject has no choice but to die. However, this was not the way to die. If this continued, the Hero King would definitely be abandoned and suffer the wrath of the heavens. Lord City Lord, you are a heroic figure. Even our church master has heard of your reputation and thinks highly of you. I believe that Lord City Lord will understand what I am saying after thinking for a while. Since that is the case, why don't Lord City Lord abandon the darkness and join the light? If you follow the will of heaven, it will be the fortune of the world. Bane spoke very quickly, not giving Geraint any time to react. Geraint only understood what Bane said after a while. Oh. Geraint nodded. From what your excellency Shadow said, you want to rope me in? Join the demonic dragon sect? The red dragon sect, Bane corrected. Ha ha ha, Geraint suddenly laughed loudly. Lord City Lord, why are you laughing? Bane asked helplessly when he saw Geraint laughing so exaggeratedly. It was obvious that Geraint was waiting for him to ask a question. I have heard of your deeds. You once led 800 red dragons to attack the granary of Snow City and then helped the disaster victims nearby. You once used a scheme to kill 3 rank 5 knights of my divine dragon empire. The rarest thing is that you have the strength to fight above your level. You once killed a rank 4 expert with your rank 3 strength. I thought that a person like you would be extremely smart. However, I did not expect that you are also a self-deceiver. What do you mean? Bang! Geraint slammed the table hard and shouted angrily. His voice seemed to be squeezed out from between his teeth. Do you really think that the red dragon you worship will protect humans? You believe in him, but he might only see you as stubborn stones and weeds. How can you believe in such a god? Bane opened his mouth but did not say anything. He did not expect the Roi Cloud City Lord's question to be so sharp and to the core. This was the question that had been bothering him the whole time. Why did the Red Dragon Church worship that fellow? People believed in the Earth God, hoping to obtain the Earth God's protection to ensure a good harvest in the coming year. Staya believed in the God of Light, so naturally, she hoped that the light could dispel the darkness and fill the world with light. Aisha believed in the God of Darkness because she felt that the darkness contained all truth, the truth of the world. However, why did the Divine Dragon Empire's people believe in such a thing? Or rather, if humans believed in gods, it was to put a trace of light in this world filled with darkness. It was to find some hope in the face of absolute despair. In that case, how dark and despairing was this person from the Divine Dragon Empire living? How desperate was he to resort to such desperate measures? They believed in Jilin. A dragon that only knew how to kill and burn. Occasionally, he was sentimental, did things as he pleased, did not care about the consequences, and did not have a trace of compassion. Bane felt stunned for a long time. Finally, he sighed and looked at Geraint. He said indifferently, all gods are the same when it comes to treating humans as stubborn stones and weeds. As for other things, he could not say anything more on behalf of Jilin. Is that all you want to say? Geraint asked. There is one more thing. Please. Can I surrender? Geraint blinked in shock. You'd better surrender. Don't ruin the great name of Shadow. TSK. It looks like it won't work. If possible, I really do not want to use this thing. In that case, Rui Cloud City Lord, I will take my leave first. I look forward to our next meeting. Chapter 211. Geraint looked at Bane, and the first thought that came to his mind was, this person is crazy. But in the next moment, he overturned his thoughts. Although Shadow's name had only appeared in the Divine Dragon Empire not long ago, everyone knew that he could not be underestimated. It was impossible for him to be such a despicable person. Ha ha ha, Your Excellency Shadow must be joking. Now that you're surrounded, there's no way out. How will you meet me next time? Geraint said with a smile. However, what was hidden under his smile was a pair of eagle-like eyes that stared at Bane's every move. Like I said earlier, since I dared to come and see you, I'm naturally fully prepared. As for what I said just now, please consider it carefully, Royan City Lord. The door of the Red Dragon sect will always be open for you. As soon as Bane finished speaking, a purple light quietly appeared under him. Geraint's eyes widened when he saw this. but his pupils shrank to the size of a needle's eye. Teleportation array? As soon as Geraint realized that something was wrong, he immediately stood up and threw a punch at Bane. The extremely turbulent fist wind directly overturned the table in front of him and the floor under the table, whistling toward Bane. His reaction was not slow, but he was still one step too slow. With a flash of purple light, Bane and the red-robed man disappeared without a trace. The powerful fist wind hit empty air and made a hole in the teahouse's outer wall with a loud bang. Teleportation array? Geraint said. When did he draw it? I've never heard of Shadow knowing how to teleport. He didn't draw it. The storyteller shook his head slightly. Before he came, he checked everywhere in this tea house, afraid that he had tampered with it in advance. Moreover, I've been watching him since he came in. It's impossible for him to draw a teleportation array under my nose. It should be a magic crystal or a scroll. How is this possible? He's only grade 3 or 4, and all the scrolls with teleportation magic inscribed on them are extremely expensive. Even I, the city lord, don't have one. Geraint said. I don't know, the storyteller said. The storyteller said, however, since he used such an expensive teleportation array scroll and paid such a huge price, he definitely won't let the matter rest. We should make preparations early, city lord. Yeah. Outside of auspicious Cloud City, there was a secluded valley, and inside the valley was a hidden cave. Cough, cough, cough. Suddenly, a burst of violent coughing sounded out in the wilderness, startling countless birds. Not long after, 2 figures crawled out of the cave in a sorry state. They were Bane and the red-robed man. Bane used all 4 of his limbs to crawl out while coughing from time to time. It turned out that he was the one who had coughed. Geraint's punch just now had hurt him after all. Bane crawled out of the cave with great difficulty. He glanced at the sky and collapsed to the ground as if he had lost all his strength. Covering his chest with his hand, he could not help but feel a burst of fear. He did not expect the strength of a 6th-stage powerhouse to be so terrifying. He was also someone who was about to enter the 4th stage, but he could not even take half a punch from him. The punch just now had only brushed against him, and he was injured to the point of coughing up blood. This was really a case of getting hurt by a scratch, and dying by a touch. Just as Bane was panting and recovering, the red-robed man crawled out and grabbed Bane's collar. He took off his hood, revealing a fair face. It was Reese, who had accompanied Bane for a year. Why did you put the teleportation array in such a place? This is so depressing. Like a thief. It's better than coming out and finding enemies all around, Bane said. Is it exciting? Ah. Reese questioned Bane as soon as he came out, and then scolded him. Look at you, are you crazy? You found a red-robed man and asked me to pretend to be a red-robed bishop? Even if you were bluffing, this is 2F** king fake. I've seen dogs pretending to be wolves and little frogs pretending to be toads, but I've never seen a cat pretending to be a tiger or an ant pretending to be an elephant. What were you thinking? Ahem. Bane coughed lightly. If you don't even dare to think about it, the enemy wouldn't believe that we would dare to do it. So, you weren't seen through. Moreover, Ruian City Lord even exposed a storyteller for a fake red-robed bishop like you. It's worth it. Worth your ass. Reese roared. Do you know? Sometimes I think you're crazy. Who would be like you, facing a 6th-stage powerhouse as a 3rd-stage powerhouse just to figure out the enemy's strength? Most importantly, you don't care at all. Do you know how big the gap between a 3rd stage and a 6th-stage powerhouse is? I know. Bane wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, thinking that he had only just found out. Previously, when he plotted against those powerhouses, he didn't have to face them directly, so it was needless to say. However, when he followed Jilin all this time, he really didn't feel that the difference between a Tier 3 and a Tier 6 was that big. Forget about a 6th-stage powerhouse, even a 8th-stage powerhouse would be the same. They were all ants and weeds, and Jilin could kill them with a flick of his finger. At that time, he really couldn't tell the difference between a 3rd stage and an 8th-stage powerhouse. He had dug his own grave. But I really admire your fearless personality. Not to mention that you can think of such a crazy idea. Just the fact that you can speak so confidently in the face of a sixth-stage powerhouse shows that you're not an ordinary person," Rhys said. Bane looked at him and smiled without saying a word. He thought to himself, "This is nothing, this is just a small matter." Thinking back to when I was in the Snowwind Empire's mobile city and was watched by 5 legendary powerhouses, I didn't even bat an eyelid. When I stabbed the Emperor in the Middle Empire, my hand didn't even tremble. But why do you insist on this auspicious cloud city? This city is remote and doesn't have any rare resources. Our Red Dragon sect doesn't really need it. Rhys changed the topic and finally asked the real question in his heart. "I say, don't lie to me. You have to know that I'm risking my life to accompany you this time." "I know." Bane face-bombed. Just as he was about to say something, he suddenly stopped. "What's wrong?" "Say something?" Rhys said. "There are definitely benefits to taking down auspicious Cloud City. Otherwise, the higher-ups wouldn't have given me this power to support this operation. If you want to listen to these, I can casually give you 1, 2, 3, and so on." Bane said, "However, those are actually incidental and not my true intentions. I can't tell you my intentions, and I don't want to lie to you, so..." Bane didn't say anything else, but his meaning was clear. Rhys quietly looked at Bane for a while, then slowly nodded and didn't ask any more questions. Seeing Rhys like this, Bane inwardly heaved a sigh of relief. If Rhys had insisted on asking, he really wouldn't know what to say. He couldn't possibly say that he was sent by the Red Dragon sect and that he was actually here to scout for information. As for why he insisted on taking down auspicious Cloud City, it was completely because of those baseless and untrustworthy legends that he had scouted out. When Bane wanted to use the Red Dragon sect's intelligence system to scout for information about the Elven Island, he didn't expect things to be so simple. As a result, he didn't even need to use the Red Dragon sect's intelligence. He originally thought that it was top-secret information that few people knew, but he didn't expect the legends of the Elven Island to be so widespread in the Divine Dragon Empire. It had already reached the point where everyone knew about it by word of mouth. Bane only needed to use the intelligence system to sort it out a little and obtain a set of information about the Elven Island. The information was both complicated and complete, chaotic and logical, general and full of details. It was like a fairy tale from the Middle Empire. In that information, the Elven Island was a mysterious island hidden in the depths of the sea. Humans couldn't find it at all. Even if you passed by it, you wouldn't discover its existence. It was said that only the chosen ones, the extremely lucky ones, and those invited by the Elven Queen could enter the Elven Island. However, the Divine Dragon Empire had been established since the mythological era and had been passed down for more than 1,000 years. During such a long time, there would always be a few lucky ones who successfully entered the Elven Island. They were the ones who brought out the legends of the Elven Island. These legends were very strange and conflicted with each other. Legend had it that there was a fog on the Elven Island that didn't dissipate all year round. Even birds would get lost in it. Legend had it that there was a lake on the Elven Island. The lake's surface was as flat as a mirror. No matter how strong the wind was, it wouldn't cause any ripples. Legend had it that the previous 2 legends were nonsense. There was no lake or fog on the Elven Island. Therefore, Bane had a headache when he read this information. However, there were 3 similarities between these legends. Firstly, the Elven race didn't age or die. Bane felt that this was worth discussing. Secondly, the Elven Queen had unparalleled beauty. She was the embodiment of all the beauties in the world. Those who hadn't seen it with their own eyes wouldn't be able to imagine it. Regarding this point, Bane felt that it would be great if it was true. Thirdly, those who had been to the Elven Island all went out to sea from auspicious Cloud City. Bane felt that if this wasn't true, then this piece of information wouldn't be of any value. Therefore, he had to obtain auspicious Cloud City. Even if it was fake, he had to treat it as real. Chapter 212. In a hidden underground space, a group of people dressed in red robes stood in a circle around a shabby wooden table. The flickering candle flame flickered between bright and dark. Hidden Shadow stood in the circle and turned his head to look at his church members. He discovered that he could not see anyone's face clearly. Everyone, we are all on the same side. There is no need to cover ourselves so tightly, right? Hidden Shadow said with a bitter smile. Hidden Shadow, you have only been in the church for a short time. There are some things that you do not know. In short, the Divine Dragon Empire hates us to the bone. That's right. That's right. All right, then. Hidden Shadow nodded and did not insist. In that case, let's talk about the detailed plan to occupy Royan City. Wait a moment. A gloomy voice suddenly rang out. Hidden Shadow looked up, thinking, I told you to take off your hats, but you didn't. How am I supposed to know who said that? You said earlier that you want to occupy Royan City? Not control it in secret? Clearly, the owner of the voice did not care if the other party looked directly at him when he spoke. Hidden Shadow's eyes flashed. This person is not simple. To think that this person immediately discovered the hidden meaning in my words. However, since this person already discovered it, I might as well say it directly. In any case, I have to let them know sooner or later. That's right. I want to occupy it, Hidden Shadow said firmly. I want to raise the red dragon flag on Royan City's city gate tower. I want to let everyone know that Royan City belongs to the Red Dragon Church. Crazy. Hidden Shadow, you, crazy. Ridiculous. The scene suddenly became noisy, and there was even a faintly indignant posture. Since the higher-ups put such a whimsical lunatic in charge of this operation, these red-robed people could not help but feel a little guilty. Why is it ridiculous? Hidden Shadow shouted. Everyone was stunned, to the extent that the originally noisy scene actually became silent for a moment. At this moment, everyone had the same thought. Not only is this person crazy, but he is also stupid. Why is it ridiculous? A shrill voice rang out, filled with disbelief. My Red Dragon Church is very strong in the Divine Dragon Empire. However, why do we not have a fixed territory? Don't you know that? I know you once stayed in the Middle Empire, where a few dozen bandits could take over a mountain. However, who would dare to do that in the Divine Dragon Empire? Because of the Dragon Knights? Ewing faintly said. His voice suddenly became extremely cold, and those who heard it couldn't help but shiver. You already know the answer. That's how the Divine Dragon Empire is. All these years, no organization has ever dared to stand up against the Empire in public. At most, they'd just play some tricks in the dark. That's right. If you dare to plant a flag in the Divine Dragon Empire, a flying dragon will ride on your face in the next moment. Then, it will spit out a fireball and fly away without looking back. The red-robed people were all criticizing Shadow for his whimsical plan. If we always fear the power of the Dragon Knights, then we will always live under the shadow of the flying dragons, never to see the light of day. The Red Dragon sect will never rise again. If we can't stand up, then the people who have been treated unfairly by the Empire will never be able to stand up. Those believers of the Red Dragon God will never be able to stand under the sun. Is this what we want? We are believers of the Red Dragon God. Under the guidance of the Red Dragon God, we will spread the holy flames throughout the world. We will purge the world and make it fair. Isn't this what we believe in? We have lofty beliefs and ideals, and we are heroic and heroic. However, now, all of you are afraid of the mere Dragon Knights. This is simply detestable. Although I have to die 9 times, I do not regret it. Everyone will die one day. It might be as light as a feather or as heavy as Mount Tai. Even if there are millions of people, I will still press forward. These generous words of the Middle Empire are widely spread throughout the continent. Have you not heard of them? We want to take down Auspicious Cloud City. We want to plant the Red Dragon flag at the highest point of Auspicious Cloud City. We want to tell those unfortunate people and all the Red Dragon sect believers that we are here. The Red Dragon God is here. Hope is here. Yu Ying's words were impassioned and powerful. Clearly, they stunned the red-robed people with higher cultivations than Yu Ying. Yu Ying glanced around. Everyone who met his gaze couldn't help but lower their heads. Yu Ying didn't think that there would be a day where he would stand in the middle of a group of believers and say things that even he didn't believe in, preaching and brainwashing them. Fortunately, when Staya was teaching Jilin, he was curious and listened for a while. Even though he was merely imitating Sti and could not match up to 10% of what Sti had done, it seemed to be enough. The red-robed people thought carefully and found that although Yu Ying said a lot, it was useless. However, they couldn't refute him. As Red Dragon sect believers, they didn't have the right to refute those words. I admit that what you said is very reasonable. However, we can't just die for nothing because of this, right? A low voice sounded. He didn't seem to have much confidence. Once we raise the Red Dragon flag in auspicious Cloud City, the Dragon Knights will definitely come immediately. At that time, the city will be destroyed and people will die. Not to mention any hope. Yu Ying raised his head in surprise. He didn't expect that there would be someone with such a clear mind among these religious believers. How strange. Therefore, occupying auspicious Cloud City is only the first step, Yu Ying said calmly. Not only do we have to occupy auspicious Cloud City, but we also have to stand there. So that the Divine Dragon Empire won't dare to rashly invade us in the future. Let auspicious Cloud City become our teaching platform. That sounds good. I think you are really crazy. That's right. In the words of the Middle Empire, isn't this an uprising? Fei said again. Yu Ying raised his hand indifferently and suppressed these voices. I heard such a story in the Middle Empire, Yu Ying said with a smile. The royal family of the Middle Empire had the world's #1 treasured sword. The Golden King was very proud and often took it out to show off to the other emperors. He would ask everyone he met, my treasured sword is the world's #1 divine sword, indestructible and incomparably sturdy. Who in the world can compete with it? Although the other emperors were angry, they were also afraid of the divine might of the treasured sword. Therefore, they let the Golden King take the limelight. Therefore, the Golden King became even more proud. He often used that sword to show off and show off. However, one day, the Golden King suddenly knew that the sword might break. Therefore, he hid the sword deep in the palace and didn't dare to show it to others easily. Although this story is a bit messy, it's nothing. What do you mean? Why do the Dragon Knights of the Divine Dragon Empire dare to fly everywhere? Why would the Dragon Knights be dispatched for such a trivial matter? It's because the Emperor thinks that the Dragon Knights are invincible. Just like the sword at the beginning of the story. Since nothing can destroy that sword, the Golden King naturally dares to show off everywhere he goes. The Hero King thinks that the Dragon Knights are invincible in the Divine Dragon Empire, so he naturally dares to let those flying dragons fly everywhere. You mean, if the Dragon Knights are no longer absolutely safe in the Divine Dragon Empire, then the Hero King will naturally think twice before sending out the Dragon Knights in the future. He won't use them so easily. In the words of the Middle Empire, this is called an important weapon of the country and can't be used lightly. So, what do you mean? Let's kill a Dragon Knight and broaden the Hero King's knowledge. Huh. Chapter 213. After the that represented endless shock, the entire underground space fell into a deathly silence. What do you think? Shadow waited for a while, but no one spoke, so he asked himself. This. Killing a Dragon Knight. Not bad. Not bad. A red-robed man's voice was small, stuttering like a mosquito. He looked like he had no idea and even looked back and forth a few times, but at this time, no one paid attention to him, so it was very awkward. Not bad, my ass. Shadow. Who was the one who pulled him into the sect? A red-robed man shouted at his companions around him. It seems to be Reese. Nonsense. Reese has always done things steadily, how could he find a madman to join his sect? You, a tier 3 thief, dare to have such thoughts? That's a dragon knight. So what if it's a dragon knight? Is it necessary? Shadow asked back. Haha. Shameless boasting, if you want to die, then go yourself, don't drag others down with you. That's right, those dragon knights are all absolute powerhouses above tier 8, and there are even tier 9 characters who are as high as the clouds, not to mention that they can cooperate with the wyverns and exert strength far beyond their own. Do you think you can figure it out so easily? You're boosting the morale of others and diminishing your own. Shadow said indifferently, we haven't even fought yet, and you're already scaring yourselves. How can you lose in terms of momentum? Shadow, I've worked with you before, and I know you're not as crazy and whimsical as the rumors say. I know you're a smart person with rational thoughts. So, since you came up with this crazy plan, you must have a way, tell me. You can't be asking us to use our lives to exhaust the dragon knights, right? Shadow looked at the slightly shaking brim of his hat and couldn't remember who this person was at all. Indeed, I know. Although the dragon knights aren't invincible enemies, they're not something we can easily take down, Shadow said. Suddenly, there was a sound of cold air being sucked in from all around. The red-robed men didn't understand why this person with only tier 3 cultivation was always so arrogant. Listening to his words, it seemed that he didn't take the dragon knights seriously. What did he mean by not easy to take down? Does that mean you just have to work harder? Dragon knights have extremely strong individual combat capabilities. Usually, a person or a dragon could be used as an army. Moreover, it is very agile and can reach any place in the Divine Dragon Empire within a day, Ewing said. We know these things better than you do. Oh, really? Dark Shadow said, since that is the case, why didn't you think about it? The Dragon Knights are so strong and hard to control. They will definitely be feared by the current dynasty. It is impossible for the Divine Dragon Empire not to have any means to restrict them. Nonsense. For thousands of years, the Dragon Knights had never betrayed the Divine Dragon Empire. They had always been loyal. How could the Divine Dragon Empire have? It's not about whether they want to, but whether they can. As long as it's possible, the Emperor will definitely be on guard. This may seem overly suspicious to us, but in the Emperor's eyes, it's called being prepared for nothing. Empty words, do you have any evidence? Previously, I received news that every city of a certain size in the Divine Dragon Empire has a space freezing formation. Flying in the space freezing formation will be very difficult, facing strong resistance. That is not enough. Even if the Dragon Knights stand there and let us attack them, we might not be able to injure them. The strength of a rank 8 expert is not something that you and I can easily estimate. Naturally, the Divine Dragon Empire prepared more than that for the Dragon Knights. You already said that this is the Divine Dragon Empire's backup. How can we use it? People forge swords, but swords do not recognize people. Many swordsmiths have died to the swords they forged themselves. It mainly depends on who is holding the sword hilt. Are the people of the Middle Empire also vague and pretentious? Then, what is a sword hilt? Naturally, it is the city lord's token that can command all city defense weapons. So, that is the case. If that is the case, it is indeed feasible. That's right. If we can get a Dragon Knight to fall without relying on Sect Master Flay's strength, we can indeed start a change in the Divine Dragon Empire that has not happened in the past 1,000 years. In the future, the Divine Dragon Empire will be restricted when sending out Dragon Knights. In that case, the remaining problem is how to occupy Auspicious Cloud City and obtain the City Lord's token before the Dragon Knights arrive. Furthermore, it would be best if we could not attract more than one Dragon Knight. In that case, this will be somewhat troublesome. After we occupy Auspicious Cloud City, we need to pretend that both sides have suffered losses, but in reality, we won by a narrow margin. Only then will the Divine Dragon Empire think that a single Dragon Knight can easily annihilate us. This is not easy to grasp. As Dark Shadow listened to the crimson-robed men's discussions, an incredibly sinister smile appeared on his face. Everyone, it is not that this humble one's words are unpleasant. However, there are simply too many uncertainties in your plan. No matter how you look at it, it is not reliable. Everyone's lives depend on this. How can you take such a huge risk? When the crimson-robed men heard Dark Shadow's words, they felt a nameless rage burn in their chests. Truly, anger rose in their chests, and evil grew in their guts. They were so angry that they could not say anything. They were just short of directly attacking. You are still being cautious at this time? Aren't you the one who wants to seize the city and kill the Dragon Knights? Good. Tell me, how should we deal with this matter? A crimson-robed man said while panting. It was obvious that he had just suppressed his anger. He was not even panting yet. There is a heaven-sent opportunity right before our eyes. Why are you all ignoring it? Dark Shadow asked, somewhat puzzled. The crimson-robed men looked at each other before looking back at Dark Shadow. It's the tide. Dark Shadow shouted with an expression full of resentment. Tide? Tide? You want to take advantage of the tide? Despicable and shameless. Cries of surprise rang out one after another. It seemed that the crimson-robed men found it hard to believe what they had just heard. Dark Shadow felt that the crimson-robed men's reactions were somewhat strange. Moreover, it seemed that someone had taken advantage of the chaos to curse him. However, that was not the main point. What's wrong with the tide? Dark Shadow asked. Why are you all so excited? Do you know what a tide is? The so-called tide. I know. Dark Shadow said confidently. The so-called tide is when an ocean current will appear in the endless ocean every summer and last for a month. This ocean current will appear from the depths of the endless ocean and flow toward the Divine Dragon Empire's eastern shore. Every year, the oceanic race of the endless ocean will ride this ocean current and follow it to attack the land. Rumor has it that the oceanic race is incomparably cruel and bloodthirsty. No human who falls into their hands has a complete corpse. Therefore, the Divine Dragon Empire specially built the world's #1 pass on the eastern shore, Calmwind Pass, to defend against the oceanic race. Every year at this time, the Dragon Knights will go all out to defend against the oceanic race. With the innate advantage of the flying dragons, they will be the main fighting force against the oceanic race. Since you know this, you should also know that the tide is related to all lives in the world. Once Calmwind Pass falls, at best, all lives will be plunged into misery and suffering. At worst, the entire eastern part of the Divine Dragon Empire will become a living hell. How can you? It is precisely because of this that we must take action during the tide. At this time, the Divine Dragon Empire does not have any extra Dragon Knights to trouble us, Hidden Shadow said. If it were a few years ago, that might not be the case. However, I am absolutely confident because the Divine Dragon Empire lost half of its Dragon Knights a few years ago, right? No way! If we take action during the tide, we will be despised by the entire Divine Dragon Empire. This is risking the lives of all the Divine Dragon Empire's citizens. Too selfish, too despicable. Hidden Shadow, you truly live up to your reputation of being sinister. This is too crazy. Hidden Shadow blinked hard and looked around. If not for the people around him wearing red robes, he would have thought that he was participating in the Church of Light's assembly. Do these evil cult sorcerers understand their position? Who do they think they are? The savior of the world? Do you really believe in Jilin, the red dragon god who kills people without batting an eyelid and will not wait for more than 2 minutes? Are you believing in the wrong cult? I am familiar with the Saint of Light. If you want to join the Church of Light, I will help you talk to her. Staya will definitely look at you in a different light since you are so worried about the country and the people. Oh. Staya can't see now. Hidden Shadow's heart was in a mess as he wailed silently. However, the expression on his face was as calm as the wind and clouds. No one could tell that there was any change in him. The simple young man who used to live in a remote village in the Saimai Empire had now become expressionless. It was somewhat unfathomable. You're tuning into the Mythic Realms YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.